Hey everyone, how y'all doing? Hope everyone's having a great day. We are back. Got my tea, more of that peach iced tea that I made over the weekend. I don't want to have that much black tea, so I probably won't have it the rest of the week, but I do need to get through it. So, yeah, we'll figure it out. Trying to cut down on black tea and caffeine. It's good, but it's not the best for you, from what I can tell. Tea can be very good for you, but from what it seems like, the black tea is less so, and certainly not the frequency at which I drink it. So gotta dial it back. Herbal teas, though, I think are very good for you. Um, don't check on that. Don't don't take my word for it. I am how you say an idiot. So yeah, don't listen to me. I don't always know what I'm talking about. That said, let's do something where I do a little bit know what I'm talking about. As promised from yesterday, let's do a debate review. And as always with these things, I'm always like, what should I review? Like, I have to find something interesting, but also interesting before I watch it, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of look for as to what would be interesting. I don't want to have one. I don't want to watch the same debates over and over, but at the same subject anyway. But at the same time, there aren't that many like interesting subjects that end up getting talked about or that I have much to say about. Like I'll see some sometimes that are like that are I can't even think of a good example, but are just not that interesting to me from the outset, or I might not know enough about to speak on it. Um, yeah, and like with a lot of these, I often also, I'm a layperson in any case. But still, there are things I know more or less about, and that I have more and less experience with. So I was hoping to find something interesting, and what I landed on, I actually got a little bit lucky, is that just a couple of days ago, there was a debate on Modern Day Debate with Matt Dillahunty, and I figured let's give him the chance to redeem himself because I think Matt has a lot of problems as a debater, but has a lot of strengths as well that simply were not going to come out. Like the debate, the position he was in the last debates we watched with him, with Daniel Hakikachu. Oh my, was it just a cavalcade of stuff that was gonna be bad for Matt? Like one, the situation was just crazy weighted against him. Like his opponent picked all three topics, and then like he was speaking first for some reason. Though I don't know how reliable it is. I've heard that he asked to speak first, which is very strange. But like, as far as him having no has as opposed. Let me restart. As far as his opponent choosing the topic, that was really weird. I don't know how that managed to happen. On top of the fact that Daniel Hakikachu is just like kind of a shitty dude and the kind of person that Matt's tendencies will not line up well against, optically especially, but also in terms of like focus and priority. Matt did a lot of stuff right, but one of his traits, he gets really heated in a debate, is both a strength and a weakness. And with Daniel, it's gonna be a weakness for the most part, and that came out a lot. And as much as I've said like a bunch of negative stuff about Matt, at least by implication, I do think he has a lot of good qualities as a debater. So let's give him a chance to show them. There are other instances where the way he gets heated is really valuable because it shows a passion, and that's as much as like it often comes off when people get energized as they're angry and it comes off bad. It also can show as being really invested, really caring, and that passion is good. Like there's you get too robotic. It's you start to wonder, does this person really believe anything? Do they care? In fact, when I did competitive debate, there was one instance where a team was running a case, the basis of which was to emphasize like debate's kind of a show, right? We sprout off these numbers about millions dead, and we say it like it's nothing. We don't really care. we're just going through the motions of saying the stuff, and the thing was actually called performativity. And so what they did was they said, well, if that's all this is, if debate is just entertainment, if there's not actually value in doing it doing debate specifically, other than the entertainment, well, why don't we be entertaining in different ways? And they do all sorts of crazy stuff. They'd like tell ghost stories and jump around the room and flicker the lights on and off and go, ooh, like just be entertaining in some number of ways. Uh, and to a certain extent, I see where that comes from, especially in competitive debate where you don't debate topics that you have a particular interest in. The topic is assigned for that duration, and you will have to argue both sides of it. And it makes it hard to have an opinion, and it makes that performativity argument a little bit more compelling. However, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing competitive debate when we do these debate reviews or we see people argue about stuff. Instead, we're watching people argue about stuff that they do care about, at least ostensibly, and having a passion for it, being invested, being involved, caring about the results and what people think. That's a good thing. It's it's humanizing, it's compelling, and I think it's and that's why I say it's it can be a strength, and it's something I think Matt does very, very well when it's appropriate. One of the biggest problems I have with him as a debater, though, is that he doesn't. It more happens than he uses it as a tool, which can be disingenuous to describe it that way. To say like it should be used as a tool, but like getting passionate is okay. But like understanding how it comes off and not coming off as like the angry atheist or whatever is important. It's unfortunate that atheists have to do this, but he's been doing this long enough to know that it happens. I feel like I turned my compliment into a criticism. I think it's a good thing. I think it can be a very good thing. He has a lot of really good traits. Obviously, he's not the only person in this debate, but since I know who he is and I know what the topic is, as you can see at the bottom of the screen here, Christianity versus secular humanism, which has the best ethical foundation. I know that I'm going to be on Matt's side with this. Now, as it turns out, this is a weird picture of him. I believe I know who this Andrew Wilson person is. If I'm not mistaken, I'll give it a couple seconds just to make sure, because he looks different from this side profile. I'm used to his handle as opposed to his name. If I do recognize who it is, I'll pause and we'll talk about who that is. Obviously, I would say that secular humanism has a better ethical foundation than Christianity or any religious ethical system. Religious ethics are based on divine command, right? There might be some that are not like that, for what it's worth. At the very least, Abrahamic religions have like a divine command theory of ethics, which is basically it's good because God says it's good. But there are massive problems with that, right? Like, what if God is not an ethical agent? Or it's the question that goes back to ancient Greece. Is it pious because is doing what's pious good because the gods like it, or do the gods like it because it is good? I think I'm phrasing that incorrectly, but you get the idea. And that applies to divine command theory as well. If God commanded something that were immoral, would it become moral, right? If God were to, like, let's say, the Ten Commandments is the easy one. There's thou shalt not murder. Well, also in the Old Testament is you shall murder these people. There are injunctions to do genocides. Apologists have wrestled with this. They've claimed it's not murder. Murder is unjust killing, but it's murder, obviously. Does that murder become good, or was God incorrect to issue that order? And if there is some morality to which we're appraising this that is outside of God, in what sense is it the divine command that makes it moral, right? Clearly there's something else. Could God do something immoral or command something immoral? Additionally, it's a very, I guess I'll be demeaning, a very juvenile look at morality. It is only moral or immoral to do something if an authority says as much. It is looking to the teacher to tell you whether it's okay to chew gum in class. Well, with that thing, maybe that's a reasonable thing. But if the teacher says it's okay to hit your neighbor, is that okay? No. But it defers it defers responsibility to the authority. It says I am incapable of thinking for myself, and say only what is defer only to this whatever the authority is. In this case, while they say it's God, it's more accurately religious text. Because as it turns out, we do not really have access to God. Even if you're a religious believer and you think like God intervenes in the world, most people are not privy to the thoughts of God. It's famously a thing that, if I knew the thoughts of God, all else would be, what was it? All else would be trivial or something like that. I forget exactly. I think it's an Einstein quote. Um, all else is detail, something like that. Uh, but even like religious people, the importance of prophets is that they have access to some communication with God, whereas others don't. So no, it's not God that they're appealing to, but these holy texts, the veracity of which are extremely questionable, but also the morality of which are obviously flawed. We've discussed prior how the Bible, both New and Old Testament, does not repudiate slavery. Most notably in the Old Testament, but the New Testament also doesn't have an issue with it. Nowhere in the Bible, as far as I'm aware, is there a condemnation of rape. That doesn't come up at all. In fact, it's like there are passages that imply it can be a useful tool, or that there are times where it's like appropriate to do that. Um, there's no concept, like even less inflammatory things aren't mentioned. Like I think most of us would agree democracy is good. Having a voice in a position, or having some effect on the governance that you are subservient to. It's not even hinted at in the Bible, because it wasn't really like an idea that was super popular at the time. The New Testament, or excuse me, the Old Testament was supposed to have been written before before even the Greeks came up with it, or at the very least wrote it down. And the New Testament was written under, like the events of the New Testament would have been under Roman occupation, where democracy was at the very least stamped out temporarily. Now, maybe you don't think democracy is good, in which case I would disagree with you, but that's another thing. There are so many problems with biblical morality. Oh, and then it goes the other way. There are condemnations of things that are really not that big a deal. Obviously, if I mentioned like dietary restrictions, who you ask is gonna vary on whether they think that's reasonable. But like Christians even throw out the dietary restrictions that are in the Old Testament for some reason. I've never understood why certain things from the Old Testament seem to matter to Christians and others don't. I don't know. They seem to like the Ten Commandments, which is Old Testament, but like right there next to it is the like kosher laws and the prohibition of wearing mixed fabrics and stuff like that. Like people, the Westboro Baptist Church will scream about like God hates gays, and like so the part of Leviticus that says if a man lays with another man, it's an abomination, it should be put to death. But like the next paragraph is an equally strong condemnation of eating shellfish. But they're not out there protesting Red Lobsters. It's nonsense. Oftentimes when people refer to like Christianity or their religious beliefs as a basis for their morality, what they are actually saying is, I do not want to justify the things I believe are right and wrong, and I will decide them and just say it comes from God or from the Bible, but it is generally coming from them. Abortion, for example, where in the Bible is there any statement that life begins at conception, any idea that abortion is not okay? In fact, there's a passage in the Old Testament, that at least one, that that includes a prescription to do abortions. It's if a man comes back from some trip and finds his wife is pregnant when he thinks he shouldn't be. I'm condensing and paraphrasing. He can take her to the temple where she will be given this potion that will make her womb discharge. And there's a lot of steps to get there. I'm skipping a lot, but Christians say no, it's against the Bible to have an abortion. it's not rooted in religiosity. It's rooted in the self, and religion is used as an excuse, as a justification, even if it doesn't actually speak to that. This is also why fascists like to Bible quote. Not everyone who quotes the Bible is a fascist. To be clear, most people who care about what the Bible says and the morality of the Bible are not fascist. But fascists love it because it's an excuse to basically say whatever they want and have divine justification. It's not that you're listening to me, the would-be authoritarian. It is instead that I am the mouthpiece of what God wants, and therefore you should listen to that. This happens constantly. I guess not necessarily fascists, authoritarians in general. This is why like theocracies are a thing, and they're always authoritarian and never like egalitarian theocracies. That's just not a thing. There's never a democratic theocracy. There's just like an amount to which the if you are an authoritarian, being the mouthpiece of the greatest possible authority is advantageous, whether you believe it or not, as long as you can get people to. So there's a lot of problems with that, whereas secular humanism is based on a pretty simple foundation that well-being of people is good. I think secular humanism doesn't necessarily reject the non-human, but I'm not sure how much it's like, well, non-humans. But the point is to minimize suffering, maximize flourishing of humans, which has a lot of like implied precepts. It is basically it is not an ethical claim in the same way that like Christians will say the Bible tells you what's right and wrong. It is a value to say that I value the well-being and flourishing of humanity. Adding on the secularism part to say I think that is a way of getting there for what it's worth, that freedom of religion as secularism guarantees is a positive, but it's not. I think if you are just a humanist, secularism will derive from that. We'll see how these debaters present their positions, but I think I've been clear where I stand. All right, so let's get into it. Matt, I believe in you. Let's get after it. Also, this is a rather quick one. I'm a little surprised. Normally these go a lot longer. Seems to be from a live event. I'm just gonna skip the preamble. Okay, I am right. So Andrew Wilson, I was pretty sure I recognized him, but he looks, as you can see, if I back it up well, of course he's looking down on the frame where I paused. And by the way, as you can see, Andrew, that's the guy on the left, looks very, very different in his picture that they used, where he's in profile, and he, instead of having a goatee, has more of a full beard on the side. So I didn't recognize him at first, but I know who this person is. Andrew Wilson goes by the name Big Papa Fascist Online. Now, while he says this is like because everyone accuses him of being a fascist, and he's like kind of tongue-in-cheek, as it turns out, it's pretty accurate. From what I've heard from him, he is a Christo-fascist type. He argues a lot about, like, not just Christian, he's like a Catholic, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I won't put that. I won't. He might not be Catholic. I don't know that for sure, so I don't want to like assume that. I'm pretty sure, but okay. He is a weirdly good moderator. Probably the best moderator I've seen online, and it's wild because he is the worst faith debater I've ever seen. Maybe not the worst, but he's pretty up there as far as bad faith debate, like just not processing what the other person says, either intentionally or otherwise, like acting as though people are saying the opposite, like insisting on things that don't make any logical sense, and when he's told as much is like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not saying. He debates in horrendous faith, not just bad faith, which is kind of ironic for a religious believer, but such as it is. We'll see if he does that, but I'm gonna be on the lookout if it, like, I'll point it out because he's really bad about it when he gets when I've seen him in debates prior, and yet one of the best moderators I've ever seen. I've seen him moderate debates with someone he's debated against before and someone who's fully in agreement with what he believes, and he was more fair than basically any moderator I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it. Like, as much as I hate his views and I despise the way he debates, I cannot praise enough his ability as a moderator. He should stick to that because he's really good at it. He's very fair. He poses challenging questions. He even in instances where you can tell he's in agreement with something, he'll phrase the question to move the debate along in a very fair way. The example I'm thinking of is there was a debate he was moderating against Vosh and someone else who's a fascist, and like openly so. And they came to the discussion of degeneracy as a concept, and he just interjects to be like, "Hey, can we just agree that degeneracy, as we're using it in this debate, means without morals, and or degenerate means right?" And Vosh, is saying something which I agree. It says like, "Well, I don't really agree with the validity of the concept, but sure." And Andrew doesn't argue that it's relevant or that the concept is valid. He just says, "Sure, but for the purposes of the debate, can we just like say this is how we're using the word so that we're all on the same page?" Phenomenal stuff. It's perfect. Like I know he believes in degeneracy as a concept and the validity thereof, but that wasn't what he was trying to do. He was just trying to establish a definition, and he was doing it before the definition could get in the way, even though it was like looming that it could. A quick interjection. All right, I'll stop going on about it. Great moderator, horrendous debater.
Want to vote
All right.
in person.
So let's hope to get into it. All right, there's a lot of talking in this very short debate.
Thanks so much, James.
Oh, and James's mic is much. Okay, well, at least the
thanks so much, James, and thanks Andrew for being here and all of you for showing up. Humanism has as its focus the betterment of humanity in this life, while Christianity has as its focus adherence to a God and the disposition of souls in an afterlife.
So it's a good dichotomy to lay down. I wonder a little bit about like, let your opponent say that, or at the very least derive it from what your opponent says. But he's right, and there's not a better time to do it. It's the kind of thing that you'd want to say if you were speaking second, but you don't have that opportunity. But it's also good that he's laying out where the focus is and what the importance is, right? And he's completely correct for that it is, well, he's partially correct. For a lot of what I've seen from Christians, religious morality is doing right by God. And like the implication is that like it's probably good for people. No, I guess I don't even really agree that for Christianity it's really like that. Because I know like, so I've heard Muslims say, which obviously he's not arguing against a Muslim, he's arguing against a Christian, so he should have praised that. Like I've heard Muslims say that it's, you know, the law is God telling you what is the right way to live, which isn't. And the implication that I understood from what that person was saying, because I'm paraphrasing, was that it's God telling you like how to live a good life. I've understood the same for Judaism. It's not just you do these things because you're told to, but like if, you know, imagine if God told you this is the way, if you do these things, you will have a good life. Well, you're not doing it because it makes God happy. You're doing it because it would make you have a good life, and the best possible advice giver is telling you that, right? Christianity has some of that with some sects and some people. Some amount of it is just do it because that's what God wants of you. But there's often, very, very frequently, an undercurrent of, you know, this is the righteous path that is good for you, at the very least good for your soul. Now, that, I guess, maybe speaks to the second part of what Matt was saying, where it's to the good of God and your posthumous existence. So maybe it's some of that, but I don't fully agree. Even though I like what he was saying, I guess the more I think about it, the more I don't fully agree that religious injunctions are for the sake of the deity always. Some of it definitely is, like worship. You could argue, like I'm sure some religious people would argue that it nourishes the soul or whatever. But it's one of those, like, I don't know. It's much more of a jumbled mix with Christianity in my experience. Though I guess we'll see if Andrew disagrees. If Andrew agrees with that, then all of my digression is irrelevant.
Our best efforts in this life are, according to the Bible, like filthy rag. Our best attempts at righteousness and justice are portrayed as vile and disgusting when compared to a bumbling God constantly failing to get his creation to love and respect him, while also prescribing the death penalty for nearly everything.
So some of this I'm like not familiar with where he's drawing that from. That is not a description that I would necessarily lay out. It sounds a little bit like an atheist interpretation in a very cynical way of what is written in some passages, but maybe he's drawing from passages I'm just not familiar with. I am by no means a Bible scholar. I haven't read it all the way through. And though some of it is also like definitely putting things in a way a Christian wouldn't agree with, but that's not necessarily a problem. You don't have to say things in a way they would agree with. I just think it's often good at the outset to draw in the people who disagree with you by putting things in the way they would agree with and then leading them to how it still shows their conclusion is incorrect. It's just a difference in style. That said, some of it was kind of funny. Like, yeah, trying to get his creation to love him and failing because, yeah, that's kind of a tendency. There's also like the demand for worship. I forgot what else he just said.
To get his creation to love and respect him, while also prescribing the death penalty for nearly everything.
Okay, and then prescribing the death penalty for nearly everything. This is one of those things that it's kind of tough to land with a Christian because the death penalties are all in the Old Testament, and while, you know, there's nothing really, as far as I know, there's nothing really in Christianity, in the New Testament at least, that says like, well, that's all for the past. You can get rid of that now. Like I think Jesus even says, "I come not to destroy the law, but to uphold it." I could be making that up, but yeah, it seems. But at the same time, Christians generally don't hold to all the Old Testament stuff. They throw out what they like and they keep what they like, and it's very hit and miss, and it's hard to nail them down. Some of them definitely hold to some parts of the death penalty stuff. I don't know. It's like impossible. There's so much, especially with Christianity. There's such a maelstrom of, or maybe not a maelstrom. It's such a quagmire of beliefs and rationale that, like, I don't know. You can't really say anything about anything. You basically have to argue explicitly with the individual because, like, none of it makes sense. Like, how we got here isn't rational. Like, why the 10 Commandments and also only some of those and also only one of those lists, but none of the other stuff? It was like, well, it's the 10, except in Judaism, none of the commandments are like more important than others, really. If any were to be, it's the first 5, because those are, as I understand, those are commandments to do right by God, and then the second 5 are to do right by men, or by humanity, I should say. And so that's why the first one isn't not to commit murder. Number 1 is actually wait, no, is it? No, I think number 6 is not to commit murder. I think 1 is like, one is like to have no other gods before the one God. Then it's like, don't bear false witness. Then it's like, don't adulter, don't, you're like, respect your father and mother. If I remember right, I could be mistaken. I could be getting the order wrong, but like Christians will take some of those and not others, and yeah, I don't know.
Adultery, blasphemy.
Oh, and I say they only take some of those because I think commandment 1 or 2 is don't make false idols, or don't do idol worship, and Christians very frequently pray to a crucifix. It's an idol.
Breaking the Sabbath, disobedient children, witchcraft, worshiping another god, not being a virgin on your wedding night. Which is better for society? Well, I'd say the one that has human society as its focus and isn't so intent on killing humans for not buying into a specific doctrine. Heaven and hell, if they were to exist, aren't human societies. What a God thinks is unknown.
I think Matt's a little off base here. I agree with him, but I think his trajectory's a little off. He's talking about what's best for society. Maybe that's the stated topic, and it's just written differently here. So maybe I'm mistaken. I didn't listen to the preamble, and maybe we should have. But the question is, which is the best ethical foundation? It doesn't matter. Like, in a way, the question, it's a different question to answer, which is better for society. Something could have a better ethical foundation, but like society's worth. I mean, that sounds like a weird combination of things, but all right. Now I'm gonna stop nitpicking.
Known and irrelevant. There's never been a secular humanist nation, either in a governmental form, which I'm not advocating for, or a primary philosophical view of the majority of the population, which means we have to look at the ideals between these two positions. Secular humanism has been around for 90 years. In 1933, the first Secular Humanist Manifesto was published.
I did not know that.
It identified humanism as a religion with 15 points. It was updated 40 years later in 1973 with a lot more information. And then it was incredibly shortened in 2003. In addition to the manifestos, there are organizations like the Council for Secular Humanism, American Humanist, etc. In the first version of the manifesto...
Oh, hold on. We have a topic in the background, which is different from what Matt was answering and from what was written in the title of the YouTube video. Matt Dillahunty versus Andrew Wilson: will secular humanism beat Christianity? That's a completely different question. It's like, I don't know. History does all sorts of stuff. Maybe, and by beat, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but like if secular humanism becomes prevalent to the detriment of Christian ethics, like maybe that'll happen. It seems to be trending that way, but who knows? Maybe it won't happen. Maybe the two will exist side by side forever, or maybe we'll have another Constantine level of influential effect on history, and Christianity will reign. But then it's also not permanent because history is ongoing. Maybe secular humanism will be prevalent for some period of time, and then Christianity is like, I don't know. It's like it's a question about anticipating history as opposed to one about like ethics. I don't know. It just seems to be mostly Christianity versus secular humanism and I don't like those resolutions very much.
Manifesto is presented as a religious view where it acknowledges there's no supernatural guarantee of human value. We advocate a heightened sense of personal life and a cooperative effort to promote social well-being. The goal of humanism is a free and universal society in which people voluntarily and intelligently cooperate for the common good. In the manifesto version 2, 40 years later, this includes a lot more information, short versions. They begin by saying those who sign this disclaim that they are setting forth a binding credo. This statement reaches for a vision
I don't really have much to say here
that needs direction.
Hell he's going on about.
We affirm a set of common principles that can serve as a basis for united action. This isn't a to-do list or a thou shalt not list. We're fine with religion's inspiration, but we're opposed to dogma and authoritarian views that place anything above human needs.
Yep.
Religions don't pass the test of scientific evidence.
And on an ethical basis, they don't pass the test of any ethical framework making sense with religious ethics, save for their own. The only way that any religious ethical system is justified is by buying into it already, is to say that this divine command is correct. You couldn't justify it on any other basis.
Promises of immortal salvation or eternal damnation are illusory and harmful. Ethics and moral values stem from human experience, and situational ethics stem from the human need and human interest. Reason and intelligence are the most effective instruments we possess. We are not advocating for the use of scientific intelligence independent of or in opposition to emotion, for we believe in the cultivation of feeling and love. Individuals are precious and their dignity.
And for what it's worth, like to that end, as much as atheists are often in a position of having to argue, or like it being important to argue a scientific perspective against religiosity or whatever, like a very like real world, cold, calculated, often appearance of an argument. The interest in humanism, which a lot of atheists are humanists. It's not necessarily the case, but often they are. The primary statement is that it's good when people are happy and fulfilled. That is not a statement about like they should intake X number of calories and do this much work. It's not cold and calculating. There's heart to it. People have value in themselves without the necessity of a God giving it to them, and without that, we are free instead of focusing on this God that may or may not even exist. We can instead focus on the well-being and the flourishing of humans. The happiness, the freedom, the fulfillment and the actualization that people can experience in their lives, and we should maximize the people's ability to do that. It lines up very well with leftism for what it's worth, because it is it endeavors first and foremost for maximizing the well-being across people. Like in egalitarianism leads towards that, where authoritarianism prioritizes some over others. Hierarchy prioritizes some over others. It's not necessarily the case that you're a leftist if you're an atheist or vice versa. I just think they happen to align very well.
He is affirmed. This is important. Us, human beings, affirming the value of individuals and human beings is more powerful than a God affirming it, and it's infinitely more powerful than a human claiming a God affirms this, which is all we appear to have.
Yeah, there's an amount to which I agree with this. Like I shouldn't say Christians. Religious people will often, not even often, will sometimes say that, like, how can humans have value if it's not given to us by a God? I think there is a beauty to saying nothing in the universe has declared I have value except me, and I say it anyway. I defy the I don't know, the assumption in the universe that we are irrelevant and worthless, and I say instead, no, we have worth, and it matters because it comes from us. And the ability to affirm your worth and the worth of others in the face of vast worthlessness in the universe. I don't want to say the universe is worthless, but nothing is saying that. There is no claim to worth outside of ourselves. I think it's beautiful. In the same way, it's in the same way that I was talking prior about how there is a beauty to science and learning in opposition to the infinite ignorance with which we are presented. There is a vast base to our imaginations effectively infinite universe that says there is nothing special about you, and we can affirm our value anyway. Now, I shouldn't say that to the detriment of others. If we find there are aliens, I wouldn't say that aliens have no worth because they're not humans. Instead, I would say that we can have worth even if no one tells us so. I think that's cool. I think that's really cool. I think that's really affirming.
The third version of the manifesto, in a nutshell, is so short. Whether God exists or not, we have problems to solve. We have to do this without appeals to the supernatural entities or intervention. We must utilize the best methods at our disposal. Reason and science seem to be the primary ones to assess reality and reach conclusions. Justice, fairness, equality, and autonomy are the primary goals. This life, not a hypothetical afterlife, is what we're trying to improve. So what happens when religions control societies?
And that's something it's important, right? Like, there is a value. We know there is a value to improving people's material conditions in the here and now. We have no access to knowledge about what happens when someone dies, and to prioritize your life after death when we don't know it exists at the detriment of lives in the here and now. I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know, there's just no axis in which that's reasonable.
Governments, either legitimate or illegitimate. Well, conflicts with other societies and other governments may not have any reasoned diplomatic solution. Need only look to Gaza. But that's Islam and Judaism. Here we have Christianity as a primary and Christian nationalism. Under secular humanism,
Andrew, so he's not putting words in his opponent's mouth. Andrew describes himself as a Christian nationalist.
To be a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, gay, straight,
and I'll leave it to him to describe
socialist,
what that means if it comes
capitalist. You just don't get to impose those necessarily on others through acts of fiat.
Correct.
Not necessarily true with the religions in charge of the government. Mike Johnson's the new Speaker of the House in the United States. He's homophobic as all get out. He's argued to criminalize homosexuality. Homosexualities, by the way, are U.S. citizens with specific rights that he wants to take away. Moreover, he advocates for gay conversion therapy, which is unscientific and torturous because he thinks he can help them pray the gay away and the gay can be eliminated. He's not anti-gay. He just wants them to cease to exist as gay. They get to keep being human beings.
It's one of those, like, I hate when people phrase things that way because it sounds a lot like stuff that I will say, but obviously when they say it's disingenuous. They want people to stop being gay and therefore are opposed to gayness as like, and gay people, because in as much as you are in as much as you are not prevented from being gay, or like, in as much as you are gay, you are, as he would say, like, doing the wrong thing, right? Whereas I will say stuff like, Nazis, for example, are Nazis, but if they stopped being Nazis, I would be cool with them. The problem I have with them is the Nazism. The distinguishing factor, of course, is that there's nothing wrong with being gay. There is something very, very wrong about being a Nazi. So I just don't love that it sounds the same, right? There's frequently, like, co-opting of leftist language, though I don't think that's exactly how this came about. I think it probably came from the, like, hate the sin, love the sinner type deal. But I mean, being gay, from everything we can tell, is not a choice. It's not a decision someone makes. A person is gay whether they're engaged in homosexual relationships or not. So, like, you cannot be rid of it. The person who says, like, oh, we don't hate gays, we hate gayness or whatever, is lying, right? They can't be rid of being gay, and so he will always take issue with them.
He thinks there's no right to sodomy. Privacy laws don't protect everything, and he thinks that what sort of sex you have, it should be his to regulate.
Oh, and as a note, the people who, like, are against sodomy, part of the reason why they use that word is because it paints a picture in some people's head about, like, oh, they mean gay sex. Sodomy implies any, I think, like, legally defined is any penetrative sex that is not in a vagina. So, like, blowjobs are sodomy. Sodomy laws would make blowjobs illegal. Like, yeah, it's like these people are against a lot of stuff, even more than you think they are.
Sodomy, by the way, is anal or oral copulation.
Oh, there you go.
Which I have it on good authority, heterosexual folks engage in as well.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's pretty
2022,
common.
he presented what was called the Don't Say Gay bill, outlawing any discussion of gender identity, sexual orientation, or related subjects, which was incredibly problematic because he ignored what the experts have to say about age-appropriate content and how.
Oh yeah, also the, like, language of that bill is a huge issue of, like, it just, like, it says you can't instruct in any way, but what instruction means as opposed to discussion is not defined. So it has like, the intended effect is the effect that's happening where teachers are reticent to have any discussion that could be legal but is impossible to know, and they'll be sued if, like, someone just doesn't like it. It's a suppression of speech beyond the literal word of the law because the word is so vague.
Critical it is, especially for kids under 10, which was his target.
That's why, like, there was that thing we saw, it was a few months ago, I think, where parents were getting upset about a teacher playing Strange World in class, a very nothing movie that involves a character, like, the main character is gay, but, like, never does any, like, never engages in. I don't even think he holds hands with his love interest. Like, it's extremely chaste. But, they can get mad about it because it's instruction on it. But is it? Not really. But that's not the point. The point is they can get shut down speech on it.
Have correct language.
These implications go beyond.
Report on,
like, even if you are, like, even if you are the kind of person who would be in favor of stuff like this, you have to understand it doesn't just affect the people you hate. It also affects a lot of stuff that is beyond that, just as long as someone who hates it has the power to enforce. A lot of these, like, if a teacher walked in and said, it was like, oh, I had a great weekend with my husband, and, like, she's straight or whatever, that falls under what could be sued for under the law. The only reason why it isn't is because there aren't people who hate straight couples. There are people who hate gay people. So that's what will be enforced. It is basically a law that allows for the persecution of thing you hate. And sometimes that's going to be you.
And about sexual abuse. His policy, if it had been implemented, would have made it more traumatic for kids and more difficult for them to out their abusers, and easier for abusers to get away with it.
Well,
Happily,
yeah,
it failed.
Conservatives love.
In 2015, he blamed abortions and the breakup of the nuclear family for school shootings. He also says the teaching of evolution is to blame for mass shootings because we've taught a whole generation, of couple generations now, of Americans that there's no right or wrong, that it's about survival of the fittest, and if you evolve from a primordial
Notice
slime.
they also, like, stuff like these arguments, they're also lying about what evolution says. Evolution does not make any ethical claims. It is descriptive of the processes that create new species. Survival of the fittest is not a prescriptive statement that that's how things ought to be. It is a descriptive statement of that is how things end up being. And for what it's worth, fittest doesn't mean the best. It means the most suitable for its environment.
What is that life of any sacred value? He wants student-led prayer back in school. So, Speaker, are you okay with Islamic prayers, satanic prayers?
No, of course not.
Or just particular Christian prayers? He's opposed to the separation of religion and government, sometimes called the separation of church and state. He thinks that the founders only wanted to protect the church from the state and didn't want to protect the state from the church, citing the notorious lying pseudo-historian David Barton.
The lie I often hear, I shouldn't even say lie, the dishonest argument I often hear is, oh, find me in the Constitution where it says separation of church and state, I'll wait. It's because that phrase, separation of church and state, doesn't come from the Constitution. It comes from, I believe, a letter that Jefferson wrote, if I remember correctly. But it's not that there is no injunction. It's not that there's no clarity about that separation. It's just not written in those words. The Establishment Clause says Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It is much stronger than the statement separation of church and state. So no, when people like pretend that there's like this is a Christian country and that there's no prohibition of that, they're the exact people that law was written to prevent from doing what they want.
To support this view. He definitely seeks to impose his views on others. Now, some of you are saying, hang on, he's the Speaker of the House, he's not the Speaker of Christianity, or that's not my type of Christianity.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Great. But what is your
And that's actually, if you're the kind of person who will say that's not my type of Christianity, you should actually be very concerned, because the person in power does not believe the same things you believe, and so the thing he wants to do will inevitably persecute you too, because you're the wrong type of Christian to him.
What's your type of Christianity like? Because there's a lot of them. How is it better? And how can we make
sure? It's a rare instance where we know what time of day this happened. There's a little clock. It says 6:16 p.m. We don't know what time zone, but we know it was at 6:16 p.m. I'm being very stupid.
Your better version than the one that Mike Johnson won. He thinks his version's correct. So do you. Countless denominations without consensus. He's already got more power than my opponent has right now. So I don't know Andrew at all. I don't know what version of Christianity he's advocating for. I didn't bother to look him up. We literally just met and said hello as I sat down here.
You probably should have bothered.
Is his version of Christianity better? I really hope so, because it'd be hard to get a whole lot worse. But they point to the same book.
It's not better.
They point to the same Savior,
Andrew's
the same
fascist,
history.
So.
Liberal and moderate Christians provide legitimacy and cover to hide the fundamentalists and to allow them to engage in Christian nationalism. Secular humanism allows you to be a Christian right up until you try to oppose it on others, and then you get to keep being a Christian. You just don't get to practice it in the way where you're imposing.
It's kind of an extension of a liberal paradigm that your right to swing your fist stops when it reaches my face. And the same is true with religious belief. In a secular world, you are free to practice any religion you see fit, or none, or any combination. You're free to have whatever religious beliefs that you like. You are merely disallowed from imposing it on others, and disallowed from, in particular, imposing it through the state.
Imposing it on others. You can pray, you can go to church, you can tithe.
Another way I prefer to put it, by the way, is I like putting it this way, but something I've realized might be more palatable to people as another way of phrasing it, is to say instead that your religion will come up only in circumstances where everyone wants it to, yourself included. What that means is it's not merely that you are prohibited from imposing it on others. Others are prohibited from imposing it on you. You are never going to be required to go to a school wherein you have to, or where you or your children will never be required to go to a school where there is prayer from a religion in which you don't believe, or one that you do. You may pray if you like. I know a lot of students pray before tests in particular. You are free and welcome to do so, but the school will not require that you do, and that's a good thing.
Gather, share, discuss, convert, vote based on your values. You can vote against your own best interest.
People do
doing
all the time.
You can teach your kids your values under secular humanism. The foundational principles of secular humanism solve conflicts with data, debate, and discussion instead of coercion, conversion, or conquest.
Which is, by the way, kind of all you're left with when you have two people who believe in the same religion but believe different things about it. Because religious belief, even if between two people of the same denomination, even if two people are Catholics, they don't have the same beliefs about religion necessarily. And so how do you argue? You can talk about Bible quotes or whatever, but you're both looking at the same Bible quotes and valuing them differently. The only thing you really have is a reversion down to barbarism. Get out a stick, and whoever has the biggest one and can hit the hardest is the winner. Whereas if you have reasons and rationale for stuff, and if you aren't merely appealing to an authority, you can make arguments and come to different conclusions and change people's minds.
There is no secular humanist sect and no denomination of secular humanists that's ever required someone to believe something that is not empirically verifiable, that's ever ordered the death of another person, that's ever ordered or acted to act or destroy property of any person or government, that has ever overthrown a democracy to impose a secular humanist regime.
I mostly don't like this
that's ever been connected
because
with
there hasn't
terrorist
really been
cells and
secular
activity,
humanist
that's ever
organizations
denied freedom of speech or
size.
expression, that's ever called for the deaths of people for criticizing secular humanism or any religious view, that has ever advocated for or inspired suicide bombers or terrorist attacks. Those things are simply not consistent in any way with the core values of secular humanism. There is no threat to Christians, Jews, Muslims, Scientologists from secular humanism. There might be from scientific skepticism and rationality if you're not able to actually demonstrate the truth of your claim. But life, freedom, and an equitable relationship are the foundation of secular humanism. There is no list of thou shalt not or thou shalts, because we recognize that nearly every attempt at such a list fails at some point as we learn more about our world and about getting better at understanding the world better, about doing better, and being better in this life.
So this is only partially true. I understand why he wants to say it, right? He wants to say, like, look, there's no authoritarian, like, rule proclamation. But there are some stuff, like, he's already laid out. Secularism means thou shalt not impose your religion on others, right? That's a thou shalt not. It's just not coming from on high. It's just a derivation of values, which is, by the way, something I wanted to mention. I think we're getting to the end of Matt's speech. I guess I'll let him finish his opening, and then we'll give our thoughts.
The goal of humanism is a free and universal society in which people voluntarily and intelligently cooperate for the common good. If you have an objection to that, or a better goal, what is it?
So, ending on a question there is kind of interesting. It's kind of a challenge to the audience, right? It's not really for his opponent. And it's a good one in that most people are not... Even if they wanted to really think about it, they're not going to really have the time to do so. And so it proves his point kind of quickly, right? It says, okay, what is better than people working together for the benefit of all? What's wrong with that? When you get into the details, it's easy to someone to say, oh, well, I don't like this thing or that thing. But what we're trying to do, the values here are unimpeachable. And that's what I think Matt was doing really, really well in this opening, is he was framing it on the basis of values, establishing very clearly what values he has and why and what they lead to, like what he thinks is good about them, what values other people have who are often opposed to this. I don't love the bringing in some of these other people, in part because, like, Andrew might not agree with them. He probably does, but he has the opportunity to be like, well, I don't agree with what they're doing. Matt did bridge that pretty well of, like, okay, but they exist and they're trying to do the same thing, and, like, now you understand. If you don't agree with them, you understand at least what's wrong with what you're trying to do if you think stuff like that should happen just differently, the imposition and all that. But he focused a lot on values, and as we saw in his last debates or series of debates, values are a huge issue, and bringing them to the forefront is a really good idea. Making clear what they are, and then the implicit challenge to his opponent is to ask, what are your values, and if they're the same as mine, you should lead it to the same direction, and if they're different than mine, well, you have to kind of justify that, especially because of what secular humanist values are. Is there something wrong with wanting the betterment of all? No, not really. So to be opposed to that makes you seem kind of monstrous, which Andrew's a fascist. He's kind of monstrous. But it does bring it to the forefront. I think it was a really, really good idea. It feels I shouldn't say it feels like, it makes me think that maybe Matt learned from his last encounter, or at least I don't know if it was his last encounter. He might have had other debates in between. I shouldn't assume that, but it learned since his interactions with Daniel Hakikachu, and realized like the importance of setting out the values and focusing on those. And he was doing that a bit in the humanist port. I think it was like the second debate they were having. But this is a lot more clear and pointed, and I think it was a really good job. I think he definitely did better on that axis this time than the previous ones.
All right, thank you so much for your introductory statement. We're going to hand it over to Andrew Wilson for 10 minutes, so thank you for being here, Andrew, and the floor is yours.
You're welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Wilson. I am the host of the one and only Crucible, the fastest growing debate channel on the internet.
All right, there you
James.
go. Okay, now seeing him in profile, it does look, the initial image does look more like him, but obviously he just has the goatee. He doesn't have the beard. The sides of his face are clean shaven and looking smooth as hell. Looking good, dude. I might disagree with basically everything you believe in, but can't deny that your shave looks good as fuck.
In case you didn't know. Appreciate that very much. Appreciate everybody being here. All of you are way too stodgy in this room. Very low energy.
I mean, there aren't a lot of people in the room. That'll happen.
Ladies and gentlemen of all pronouns.
So that's probably something he's unaccustomed to. He does a lot of online debates, so he's used to just a few people in the room and a chat. And so, but when you're in a room doing a debate, and it takes a lot of people before there's a lot of energy in the room. We saw the size of the room. It's probably the size of an average classroom. So maybe there are like 30 or 40 people in there at most. You're not going to have that kind of energy. That's something I'm used to in competitive debate. Frequently, it's you, your opponent, and the judge. That's it. Sometimes there's a timekeeper. Sometimes there's a person or two watching. But sometimes there's the next pair of debaters who are going to have their round immediately after you. It's like they're the next flight. But most of the time, it's like 3 to 5 people in the room, you and your opponent included. So I'm used to that, but yeah, it's like if he's like, "Hey, where's the energy?" Yeah, it's like that. It takes a lot of people before you have a lot of gusto in the audience.
The Z's, the Zers, the hims, and hers. I would like to thank you for tuning in today for this
also, you can't deny that
exciting
Andrew has
in-person conference.
What a timbre in his voice.
My name is Andrew Wilson. There's a few ways this debate could go. The topic is Christian ethics versus secular humanism. Which has a better foundation? The funny thing is, I already won that.
So far, everyone has had a different... So far, we've gotten like 4 different topics. Even this is different than what's written in the title. All right.
That topic, because as Matt explained to Jay Dyer, he has no justification under the skeptical belief structure to give an accounting for any meta-ethical presupposition.
So this is already kind of dishonest. What Andrew was saying is that yeah, you cannot ever have any like full foundation for anything ethical or meta-ethical because at a certain point, every system makes assumptions, and so yes, at the level at which we can never really know anything about anything, then no, secular humanism is not firmly founded. That applies exactly as much, if not more, to Christian ethics. The only difference is that Andrew is deluded himself into thinking that it's true and therefore is founded. But at the end of the day, like in the same way that Matt cannot know on a meta-ethical level that his belief system has a good foundation, it cannot cannot justify it fundamentally. Neither can you, Andrew. It's like this is it's just not a real argument.
He just kind of grants himself stuff. He grants himself logic, he grants himself reason, he grants himself an entire worldview, even though he's using an unjustified starting position for it. So I'm not honestly all that interested in doing the God not real debate, because it's boring.
So I see where he's going with this. He doesn't want to do the God not real debate because obviously if he can't assume the existence of God, nothing he says will make sense. And it would be a different topic. They would have to have a debate unto itself about that. But the ability to simply assume the existence of God is basically, it's basically assuming he's correct before he's gotten there, right? He wants to differentiate himself from Matt by saying like, well, he can't found his beliefs on a fundamental level, but I can because God is real. But like, if you understand that not everyone agrees with you, especially half the people in this debate do not agree with you, you understand that you haven't proven anything. You've just assumed that you're right. And yeah, if we assume that God is real and that that the Christian God specifically is correct, and that the Bible is the divine word from God, and that we have like translations correct and all this stuff, if we assume all those things and a few others that I'm sure I forgot, then yes, you have defined yourself into the correct position of like, well, yeah, it's founded on stuff. But the understanding that that's just not like that there are all those things you have to assume. Well, those are the kind of things that Matt assumes as a foundation, except they're more reasonable. What Matt assumes.
And two, it's also really boring. It goes like this. I don't see enough evidence and remain unconvinced there's a God. Then I say, but you use a theistic worldview of justification like there is a God to grant yourself logic.
So this is what I mean about him being bad faith. That the argument against the existence of God is not generally I don't see enough evidence. It is the evidence provided is not real evidence, not good evidence, not exclusively concordant with the conclusion they want to reach, and there are good reasons to believe that there is not a God. There is evidence opposed to the existence of God. And then he follows that up with, well, you have to assume a theocratic worldview, or not theocratic, I forget the word he used. You have to assume religious beliefs in order to get there, because he, as many incorrect religious people believe, that you cannot have logic without God. That's just not true. It's again a circular argument where you're basically like, well, we have logic and we can't have logic without God, so therefore there is a God. But the only reason that you think that we can't have logic without God is because you already believe there's a God and need it to be relevant for something, right? It kind of leads into itself. This is what I mean. Like, it's just a really, really bad argument. And he's just happy to trot these out. I know he's been taken to task on these arguments before, but here he is saying them again.
Everything else. So instead of that, I'm just going to grant Matt's entire worldview.
Oh, okay.
2/3 or more of this entire planet are all operating inside of a shared delusion that they were created by a sky daddy who loves him some slavery and murderousness.
So that's also not entirely true. Not all religions believe these things. Like, some religions believe in a sky daddy, some don't. Some religions believe that they're born to, like, in serfdom, some don't. But yes, all the atheist will generally believe, myself included, that the religious people are incorrect about their beliefs of the supernatural.
He thinks it's funny to kind of cosmically with people. That's his deal, kind of his whole thing.
And again, it's like he's focusing a lot on like how vile the thing is to make it seem like the atheist is uncharitable, even though Matt hasn't put it in those terms. If you put it in the terms I did, suddenly it seems much more reasonable a statement. I believe a lot of people are incorrect about their beliefs. Everyone believes that a lot of people are incorrect about their beliefs. This is not special or weird or rude or disrespectful. It's pretty normal, actually.
Worldview. So now Matt's right, and the question becomes, should we let them to continue to believe in this nonsensical Stone Age madness?
All right, lying again, Matt. This is a scripted speech, so obviously he's not responding to what Matt said, but the fact that he felt appropriate to write this, like, he knows that atheists don't say this. Atheists don't say that they need to be made not to believe. It is that people who believe in religious stuff do not have a special right to their beliefs being favored by government or society. You're free to believe whatever it is you want. You are not free to impose it on other people.
Or do we stop them from engaging
not be free
in
to
it?
impose it on other
My
people.
contention is, even if God isn't real at all, that people acting as though he is still superior to whatever nonsensical egalitarian worldview Matt can come up with.
Notice
See, Matt,
nonsensical egalitarianism. Andrew does not like egalitarianism as a concept. This is what I mean about, like, he is a fascist, as much as he says his name is tongue-in-cheek.
Matt also just acts as though the things he believes are true. He believes...
The massive irony of a religious person being like, he acts as though the things he believes is true. My dude, according to you, most people do that. Everyone does this. You in particular.
He believes and therefore acts as though logic is real, math is real. Everything is real based on his presuppositional belief that they are real. You see, human flourishing, the cornerstone of
One of the questions comes to mind when people say stuff like that, like, oh, logic is real, math is real. Like, if we could prove conclusively that there is no God, I think that would be impossible because it's proving a negative. But let's say we could. Like, would logic and math vanish out of existence? Someone like Andrew would likely say, no, that's like the existence of logic and math mean it's impossible for God not to exist. And at that point, when they say that, the point comes sharply into view. This is not a statement that is actually evidence. It is a non-falsifiable statement. I don't think we've covered this in the concepts document, so we can add this to our list of fallacies. We'll do that now, and I'll fill it in later. I promise. I definitely won't forget again. And that's a non-falsifiable argument. Let's hope I spell that right. Basically, if an argument cannot possibly be proven false, it is not an indication of strength of the argument. It is, in fact, a fallacy that if it is consistent with anything, then it doesn't demonstrate the truth of the matter. Instead, you haven't demonstrated anything. If any possible evidence if anything ever could lead to that conclusion, well, then you can't actually disprove it. And if you can't disprove the argument, then how do we know it's true?
Ideology and that of secular...
I guess I'll expand on that a little bit. Every argument, it needs to be at the very least possible for, if circumstances were different at the very least, for it to be untrue, right? So, for example, the proper syllogism, Socrates, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal. That could be not true. It is falsifiable. What if we determine that Socrates is not a man? Right? He's actually the name of my dog. Well, as it turns out, all dogs are mortal too. But, what if I named my pet rock Socrates? Well, suddenly that argument is false. It is falsified. Not merely falsifiable, but falsified. If it is impossible to do that, then your argument isn't valid.
Humanism is totally meaningless.
And so this is what I mean of like, he's like, so when people say like, oh, you need if their God needs to exist for logic, what they're actually saying is nothing. I am making what they're actually doing is creating an unfalsifiable argument. They're saying, you could not disprove the existence of God or prove that I'm wrong because math exists and I've decided that it's impossible without God, even though there's no basis for that claim.
By whose metric? From my perspective, for instance, attempting to lie to people who claim men can be women isn't human flourishing.
In case anyone's surprised, Andrew's a transphobe. What he's saying when he says men can be women? By the way, nobody says men can be. The only people who say men can be women are people like Andrew, disingenuously to describe trans advocates' positions. I don't believe men can be women because trans women aren't men. They're women. So I don't believe that men can be women.
From Matt's perspective, it is. Why? Why should the collective of humanity
it is like demonstrably flourishing? We've been over that. We went over this yesterday, actually. People do a lot better when they transition as opposed to when they're prohibited from doing so.
I didn't say men can get pregnant. Why should they say that men can have periods? Things which are categorically
turning this into this is completely off topic, but he has a bugbear about like I hate transes, so we're going to talk about it. Yeah,
obviously false.
No, I mean,
that
it's demonstrably
preserving
true,
homosexuality in society is good for human flourishing,
Yep,
even though they are
anti-homosexual.
reproductive dead ends.
So, as it turns out, Andrew, lots of people are quote unquote reproductive dead ends. Should we murder people, women who have gone through menopause? I guess I should say people, but he would only accept women can go through menopause. Should we just like kill all of them because they can't, or like they're not allowed to get married if they're postmenopausal? What if they're just like sterile because maybe an STD, or maybe they were born that way, or maybe like they ran females only have so many eggs. What if they ran out or whatever? Maybe that's what menopause is. I'm not actually sure. Like, what if someone was injured in war and like they're now impotent? That's happened before. Like, are they not allowed to get married? Should they be killed? Obviously, it's nonsense. He just hates gay people, so he'll make up a reason why it's okay to take issue with them.
And that Western society and egalitarianism is superior to those
evil... Oh, and also with the funny story, because of the existence of trans people, gay couples can't actually have kids. They're not reproductive dead ends. If a trans man and a cis man are in a relationship, maybe especially like with one of the trans men we saw on one of those Jubilee panels who went out of his way to make sure that he is still able to reproduce and get pregnant. Look, there's a gay couple where they had a kid. Now Andrew would say that's a straight couple, weirdly, but like I don't know.
Full theist society. Even though the Western nations can't even reproduce their own populations, but instead have to replace their population with foreigners from those theist nations that can reproduce.
Oh, he also lies about like the birth rates. He thinks that the birth rates in Western countries has declined to the point where like it's below replacement, which also isn't true. And so he's like obsessed with this kind of thing. I'm not going to get into it. It's a whole rabbit hole unto itself.
Let's start with a basic societal question recently asked of the West, who has now embraced a scientific and non-theistic approach to governing. Super basic question
God, I wish. I cannot tell you what much I wish he was actually right that there is a scientific approach to governing. Maybe we would do something about climate change. It's so wild. Like this was happening to me during the last presidential election too. Of like, it feels very weird to argue with people who are like, this is a good thing that's happening, and be like, no, that good thing's actually not happening, but they're mad that the good thing is happening, and I'm sad it's not. It's just so weird, like, because he's like, they're doing a scientific approach to governing. We're not doing shit about climate change. If there was a scientific approach, we would do something about it. But we're not, so, like, you can assure them, no, the good thing isn't happening.
Kindergartner knows. If you don't believe me, go watch Kindergarten Cop. The question posed to the Western nation is, can a man be a woman? Right?
No.
To the question of if a man can be a woman, they say the answer is yes. And the way we will decree they can be a woman is by simply saying that woman now means male.
No.
Problem solved.
What? Literally no one says that.
Humanists.
Wait, what? Literally no one says that. I don't even know who he could, like, what he could possibly be deriving that incorrect belief from. Like, I know that there are people who will say, like, I know that, like, some of what he said, like, when he says people think a man can be a woman, what he means is that he's heard people say that males can be women, right? Trans women are women. And he's misunderstanding that and misinterpreting that and putting it in a obviously in a way to like caricaturize it. Like he's straw manning the whole thing. But I don't even know where he could have derived the idea that people say that woman means male. No one says that. No one says that. In fact, trans advocates more than most and more than you certainly acknowledge the difference between sex and gender and understand that trans women are usually male. I say usually because I know there's a school of thought that transition does at some level change your sex. It's something I'd want to understand better before I make a comment on. But I know like Philosophy Tube has talked about this and stuff, and well, she's really smart and she has good reasons for stuff. So I want to understand it better. But it is something that I don't understand well enough to take the position myself. I don't know if I agree with it at the moment. But no, nobody says that, Andrew.
Thank you so much.
Like, just willing to lie about anything.
Why, you ask, would people be this over-the-top stupid? Well, it's simple. the good is the good, man. We have to do what's good for human society and human flourishing. And
Notice he is talking incredulously about doing what's good for human society. He's like, oh, we should do what's good for society. Like, that's a stupid or bad idea. Do you want to do what's bad for society? I mean, he does, but it's so obvious how absurd that is.
You don't call these deranged lunatics something they obviously aren't. They might self-terminate, so in order to avoid that, we need to make everybody on planet Earth lie to them.
That's
this
not
is
at all
human
what's said,
flourish.
but all right.
Just redefine shit.
For what it's worth, again, trans people, from what I've heard from them, are far more concerned about their legal rights, their medical rights, their freedom from discrimination, than they are about whether you misgender them. You can think that trans women are men and trans men are women or whatever else, but if they are free from discrimination, if they have access to their medical care, if they're not at risk of genocide or like being threatened with conversion therapy or whatever else, I'm sure they're far more okay with they're much less interested in that behavior of yours.
It's true.
It's annoying and it's bad, but like it's not nearly as important.
Matt will often say, I remain unconvinced. Well, Matt, I'm also going to use your standard. I need for you to 100% convince me beyond a shadow of a doubt that males can have babies. What's the answer going to be? No, Andrew.
Nobody says males have babies. Again, this is the conflation of sex and gender. Men can have babies if they are trans men. Like, I wish I could remember his name because he was a really cool guy, and I liked what he said a lot, but I don't remember. It was from not the last Jubilee video, but the one before that. Though I did like Adrian in the last Jubilee video as well. Yeah, the one with Blair White. I don't remember his name, but he was really good. Like, as a man, he can have babies. Boom. But he's not a male. No one said he's a male.
Stupid. Males can't have babies. Men can have babies.
There you go.
Just
so he
define
understands.
man to include females, dummy. Well,
so again,
Matt,
the conflation, right? He's upset at people making a differentiation, and that's what he just got mad about. And notice how he changed the topic. Like, you have to convince me, a guy who acts in bad faith about literally everything, 100%, a degree of certainty that is unreasonable for any level of, like, nobody says like that's the amount to which you need to agree with a thing to be convinced, right? In this thing that's completely off topic, and also I have misunderstood and mischaracterized. It reminds me a lot of the Kent Hovind demand that you prove to him that a dog can come from a non-dog, when people who believe in evolution are like, no, that's not possible. That's evolution gives you good reason to understand that cannot happen. So no, you need, so like, I can't convince you of a thing that I don't believe, and you wouldn't accept it anyway.
I'm convinced. I'd like Matt to convince me that if you are a male and you are having sex with another male, which would not be allowed in my version of a secular humanist worldview, how is it that you're not just basically having sex with a guy with a wig on? I really want to know the answer to that question. Not just me, but all rational people who aren't lunatics.
Is he saying, like, if you're having... Oh, so he's saying... Okay, first of all, he's, like, doing the, like, having sex with a trans woman makes you gay or whatever, which it doesn't. And even if it did, who cares? Being gay is fine. But he does get that trans women don't wear wigs all the time, right? Like, they just grow their hair. People can grow hair. Guys can have long hair. I know you have short hair. Guys can have long hair. It's not impossible. The guy you like so much, Jesus, is depicted often as having long hair. What are you talking about? Obviously, he wants to demean the idea of transness, right? You're not a woman. You're just a man with a wig. It's the same thing as like a man in a dress thing. Obviously, being trans is more than putting on a wig or a dress. It is a part of a person's identity in a very real way. But he wants to demean it, and obviously, like, he can't reckon with, okay, if you're having sex with a trans woman who has boobs and long hair and, like, let's go the full 9 yards of, like, has had bottom surgery and therefore has a vagina and, like, behaves like a woman and you're attracted to her for her femininity, he wants to be like, how is that not gay? Like, in what way would it be? And even if it was, it's fine. Being gay is fine. But, of course, he hates gay people.
Also want to know why it's ma'am, isn't a complete and total crock of garbage. Because I remain unconvinced that it isn't a total lie, and that these people don't just pervert the language to include their own perversions and then add human flourishing at the end.
This is also another, like...
Matt has said...
Another, like... Transphobes, homophobes often do this. They just, like... They call it a perversion, something evil and disgusting and degenerate. He just hates degeneracy. He's just mad and, like, he's disgusted, and therefore it's wrong. He doesn't have a good reason for why it's wrong. He's making up the reasons afterwards, and the reasons don't even make sense.
He wouldn't make a law stopping 9-year-olds from having sex with each other. Not kidding.
So this is a reference to his debate with Daniel Hakikachu that came up. Why would you need a law like that? It's not really a thing that happens, and when it does, who's doing something wrong? What would the law be? Like, you have to imprison both 9-year-olds? What? How would that make sense? Is it have they done something so odious that, like, they should be imprisoned at 9? Or is it their parents? But why is it their parents' fault? They didn't necessarily agree to it. And when Matt was talking about this, he was trying to move past that question to get back to the fact that Daniel Hakikachu is cool with adult well, I shouldn't say people, because the way the president... Daniel is okay with adult men marrying 9-year-olds and having sex with them. Like, he was trying to distract from it, and it's really telling that BPF over here, Big Papa Fascist, is focused on that as the absurd thing to not be okay with.
I know this is going to sound a little bit totalitarian, but I would in fact create laws that made it a crime for a 9-year-old.
Yeah, that's pretty totalitarian.
I would hold the parents criminally liable for allowing this to happen.
There it is.
In my evil authoritarian
society.
That
is actually
where
really
I don't
evil.
even let 9-year-olds have sex with the parents.
So they don't normally do that. In the event that it does happen, the parents aren't out there, like, saying that's what you should do. It's likely children who have gone through puberty pretty early, so that also means it's really even more unlikely in the sense that if you're going into puberty at 9, especially if you're a boy, like, that might be precocious puberty. I'm not exactly sure. That's a little young for males to go into puberty. Like, it's pretty, like, it's one of those things, like, we don't need a law about this because it doesn't really happen, and when it does, what's the thing that makes it wrong that you should criminalize parents? Like, parents aren't supporting this in the events that it happens. So, like, you're like, okay, we found out that your 9-year-old had sex with another 9-year-old. You're going to prison for reasons? Why? And he's saying in an incredulous way, oh, I guess I'm so evil. In the way that people will say that when it comes to stuff like, oh, I want people to not be able to force the religions on others. Oh, that's so awful of me. But he's doing it for something that is actually pretty authoritarian and vile. Like, why? Why does this need to, like, what good is done by this? The good that's being done from his perspective is it's a thing he hates, and it's being criminalized. People are being punished for a thing he doesn't like happening.
Straight to jail.
Yes, that's evil.
For negligence.
Negligence?
Now, I think that's better for human flourishing. I think maybe parents would be far less likely to let their 9-year-olds do that if they went to jail.
So, again, talk about parents letting their 9-year-olds do that. He's also the kind that, like, he thinks parents own their children. Children do stuff. Children make decisions, and they do stuff. When I was 9... I didn't have sex with anyone, but I didn't know what it was, and I hadn't hit puberty yet. But I don't know. I got into fights on the playground. My parents didn't allow me to do that. That just happened. When I say fights, I don't mean physical fights. I don't think I ever got into a physical fight in school. But I mean, I would yell at kids sometimes, because kids do that. My parents didn't let me do that. It just happened. It's a thing that I did as a child.
Stupid me. Next,
but he thinks
I would in my authoritarian society decree that all simulated sex acts in public were criminal offenses and would make sure that all people went to prison.
So simulated sex acts is a very broad term. What does he mean by that is the question. What he's gesturing at is pride. He wants to get rid of pride parades and pride floats because there are often sexualized behaviors, but he would include going out in like just shorts and dancing with other gay guys. Like he would call that sexualized, but he wouldn't call that sexualized if you were like at a beach party and dancing with a lady. You know, what we call simulated sex act. He just wants to criminalize homosexuality, and he's acting as though he has some actual opposition to the principle of what's being done when it's just the gay people doing stuff. What the fuck is a simulated sex act? Depending on who you ask, like, I don't know, like if you have a foot fetish, is going outside barefoot a simulated sex act? Like, I don't know. Sex acts are very, like, some people have humiliation fetishes. If you berate someone in public, is that a simulated sex act? I mean, he might say so because he wants to criminalize anyone he considers a degenerate, but obviously that's, yeah, authoritarian and evil.
For the crime of indecency, which doesn't assist with human flourishing, and I'd like to know why I'm wrong.
Oh, I mean,
secular humanism
he
can
can't
basically
hear me, but
be whatever the hell you want it to be. It doesn't really need the principle of freedom or the starting axiom of freedom and peace in order to postulate whatever it wants.
He doesn't like
it's
the idea of
sloganeering.
freedom.
They're slogans. They don't mean
so
it.
he's saying it's meaningless because when he opposes it, he wants to not be obviously vile and evil, right? So he's like, oh, it's meaningless to be interested in freedom.
Anything. Okay, why do 9-year-olds need to be able to have sex in order to advance humanity?
It's just
why do we need to lie about a person's sex in order to advance humanity? Why are these things necessary for human flourishing? Why are decency laws bad?
So another conflation there. Anything that isn't illegal is necessary for must be necessary for human flourishing. That's basically what he just said, right? But there are things that aren't illegal that aren't necessary for human flourishing. Like, it's not illegal for me to buy like sugary cereals, but it's not necessary for me to be able to do that for me to flourish. As it turns out, I know this because I don't buy sugary cereals, but it's not illegal for me to do that. Like, there's a conflation there. It's not necessary for 9-year-olds to have sex with each other, and I think it's better when they don't. But to make it a criminal issue for the parents because like the rare instance of this happened is insane, and it is merely punitive and authoritarian because you saw a thing that you thought was disgusting and you want someone to suffer for it.
Why would Christian ethics stop flourishing when the theist mandate is to reproduce and the secular mandate is let's just all have sex and have fun, bro?
So reproduction doesn't necessarily make you happier. Some people want kids, some people don't. Some people want 2 kids, some people want 5, 10, whatever. But if you want 2 kids, why is it better to have 6? And if you want 1 kid if you want no children, why is it better that you were made to have children? And the secularist doesn't say, yes, he said it's just sex, have fun. Well, I mean, they do kind of, because like, who cares? Just don't hurt people and do whatever. But the implication is like they're saying you shouldn't be reproducing. It's like, no, you can if you want. I think it's good when people reproduce that want to. Wouldn't it be nice if every person who had a child wanted that child? Wouldn't we live in like, wouldn't that be like one of the best things that could happen in regards to reproduction? If a person was never pregnant that didn't want to be, and a person was never born that wasn't wanted, wouldn't that be really good? But I don't know. Andrew is like, nope, you should sometimes have kids even if you don't want to. Fuck you.
That sounds way worse for human flourishing. In fact, I would say not reproducing is a worst possible thing for human flourishing.
But nobody said not reproducing. Even your caricature of the secularist position didn't say not reproducing. You said it's just sex, have fun, do what you want. No one said don't reproduce. Can if you want. Talk to your partner if you're ready for it. If that's what you want, good. Have children. I hope you and your children are happy forever. Okay? No one says you can't.
How do you flourish? So,
also,
I guess
it's like if he's saying if no one reproduces, how do you flourish? Well, if everyone just decided they don't want to have children, they could live happy lives, and then their lives will be over, and then they have flourished. It is humanity who might not flourish, but the insistence that humanity must continue irrespective of the desires of humans, it's a little weird, actually. And as it turns out, a lot of people want to have children. There is a tendency for the birth rates to decline as industrialization increases and as wealth increases in an area, but people still have kids, and there are ebbs and flows. It doesn't always. We don't need to grow the population forever into eternity. As I understand according to the projections of trends and so on and so forth, the expectation is the 13 billionth person will never be born. Basically, we'll plateau and we'll just kind of hang out at around just under 13 billion humans on the planet. Now that's a lot of people. Why does it need to be more than that? If we just reach parity and equilibrium, where the population, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but it's around there. How's that not flourishing? And in fact, the fact that people will be better off if they're only having children when they want to, as opposed to this insistence on nope, always have more kids, always reproduce that BPF seems to want.
In essence, step 1, I remain unconvinced. Step 2, I need to be convinced, so I am no longer unconvinced. And step 3, but God not real dough doesn't matter here.
And of course, the you need to convince me thing is, especially from him, really disingenuous. We're in a debate. You're not going to change your mind. You're also a colossal moron who refuses to listen to what other people say. So no, you will never be convinced. And to set that as the paradigm, knowing that you will never listen or never cede any ground, makes this, well, he's a fascist. So on the right, debate is about power. It puts it in well, you cannot overcome my power to simply say no. But that's not what it's about. That's not what we're here for. You don't win the debate because the other person didn't convince you. There's not really a winning when engaged in good faith, which obviously you're not doing. It's about who can prove their points. And if you, despite the fact that the point has been proven, refuse to cede and refuse to acknowledge that, that's on you, my dude. That doesn't mean Matt did something wrong. That means you did.
Granted it to still demonstrate just how stupid this ideology actually is. With that, I'll yield my time, and I'm happy to get into it.
Hey, James, I just sent you a message.
Why is this going to kick it into an open discussion? So 50 minutes and...
Okay. So now we get to open discussion.
No, I don't think so.
It seems like it's... Oh.
I'm not going to sit here and dignify the preparation that I went through and what people work here for.
You're so indignant.
Keep interrupting me.
I am. Okay. You're so indignant.
Would the moderator like to step in so that I can finish what I'm saying?
Please, Matt. Please. How dare someone have an opposing worldview?
I'm not going to sit
here and how dare you have an opposing worldview. It's you keep interrupting. That's what he's taking issue with. Now, I'm curious why he's so indignant. I'm also a little surprised because what Andrew has said is, at the very least on its face, significantly less objectionable than what Daniel said, and he sat through 3 debates with that guy. So I'm curious what he has to say. I'm a little surprised, and maybe I disagree, but let's hear him out.
Well, it was supposed to be a debate about Christianity versus secular humanism, which one's better for the world.
Yes.
With someone who clearly showed up with an agenda that has nothing to do with that.
True. He didn't really talk about
someone who refers to trans people as deranged.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I see where I was going. I understand the dude, this guy's just he just hates trans people and gay people and whatever else, and calling that out. But to say we can just cut it here and not have the debate, which is how we started. I don't think what Andrew has said has necessarily tripped enough of the audience's censors for a guy who's just evil and hateful for this to be warranted. You could have done that in the Daniel Hakikachu debates at a few times, and I think at some point you did. I don't think you've gotten there just yet, but I don't know. It is at most a little early. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's hear him out.
Who will self-terminate if you dare to question them?
How am I wrong, Matt?
Someone who misrepresents a quote from a debate where I said I wouldn't make a law about 9-year-olds having sex being legal.
Oh, I guess, okay. So this is where Matt's in a position that makes this make more sense than where I'm sitting. I'm obviously an observer and not the person being talked about. To have your own views, you can tell when Andrew is willing to misrepresent the thing you said, and you said it's not from where I, Ernest, am sitting. He misrepresented Matt. it's not me. But if it's he's misrepresenting me in a conversation with me, you can tell, like, you're like, okay, he's not actually going to be like a good faith interlocutor, which is correct. And like, to have a specific issue with that is a lot more reasonable. I had also heard, I don't know if it's accurate, I heard that Matt's girlfriend is trans. If that is the case, that also gives additional credence of like, well, yeah, like, you know, you're being pretty cruel and this is personal for me. It doesn't have to be to take issue with trans stuff, but I understand that, like, when your loved ones are involved, it makes it more poignant. So this is a lot more reasonable than that. But again, let him finish.
To the 9-year-old,
that might
not
explain
that I
why
was
this
in
is
any
such a
way
short
in
debate.
favor of it, and that I was actually opposed to it, which I addressed during that debate. But moreover, this is not remotely an honest interaction on the front of whether or not secular humanism is valuable. Because this, when he presented his position here, has nothing to do with secular humanism. From the get-go, it's all about me. Matt thinks, Matt thinks, Matt thinks. I'm giving what Matt thinks, what Matt thinks, what Matt thinks.
You know, he's got a good point. Like, maybe you shouldn't start with, like, we don't have to do the back and forth. Maybe you can just, like, set out your argument. And one thing I do like about Matt, something he's able to do very well, is enter into the back and forth period with a air and a posture that would make it seem rude to interrupt him, as though he has another speech that is protected and he's allowed to speak his mind. And he's even engaging it as though that's the case, which allows him to express thoughts express more the thoughts in a lengthier way, and sometimes you need that time to be able to do that. It's something I think he does really, really well, and he's doing it here. He doesn't necessarily, like, he can just lay out, like, all the issues that have come out, because he's right. Like, Andrew didn't really talk about what Christian ethics are. He suggested a couple of things, but, like, didn't attach it in any way to actual Christianity. And then he didn't talk about what secular humanism is. He just, like, screeched about the things that he hates because, like, degenerates want to push it, and he associated that with Matt more than secularism. Though he did talk about his secular humanism a little bit. He did mostly a phrase.
I came in with the Secular Humanist Manifesto. I came in with positions that aren't that aren't merely my positions.
Oh, well, as long as multiple people hold a position, it
this
makes it
guy's
valid.
not serious, and I'm leaving. James, if you want a refund, you
well,
let me
good
know.
day, sir. And I'll cover your refund, Mr. Matt.
He just said he'd cover my refund.
I would cover his refund.
I think the posturing from Andrew is not landing as well as you'd like it to, but I will say, like, getting up and leaving at this early, I don't think he, like, made it. I don't think he made clear why that's reasonable enough to really justify it. One of the problems is that in a position like this is you have to I shouldn't say you have to. There is a caricature in the mind of a lot of people of the angry atheist. He has avoided that. He didn't, like, start screaming, get all angry of, like, saying whatever else. But leaving leans into that a little bit. And there's also the idea of the, like, triggered SJW, the person who is pro LGBTQ rights and like, doesn't like bigoted people and movements and whatever. And it does a little bit look like that, and, like, though Andrew isn't, like, landing exactly how that comes across. If he's literally leaving, what the hell is the rest of this time?
No.
I didn't know this happened, so I didn't know that we didn't have a full debate to go over. Oh no, I promised you.
No, I'm not going to dignify a debate with someone who walked in to trash talk people and be smug and all of the things that he's being right now. He's already said he will cover my expenses. You don't have anything to worry about. This debate is over. Goodbye.
I think if Matt was going to do this, he could have been he could have made the point a little bit stronger, of just like, and I think he missed an opportunity to lay out that, like, yeah, Andrew has already said that he basically just wants to criminalize the things he hates, and that makes him kind of repugnant. I guess I'm mostly taking issue with this because I don't think Andrew has been as bad as some stuff that Matt has been willing to put up with, and I don't think he's been bad enough to leave at this moment, as opposed to drawing out some more from Andrew before being like, okay, I think we've made it clear that this guy is not here for a good faith debate. He's not, and Matt's right. I just don't know how much other people watching this will be on the same page about that. And again, I can't help but think, like, you sat through 3 debates with Daniel Hakikachu. Maybe that's why he's more willing to do this. So, like, he doesn't want to do that again. He already sat through 3 interminably awful debates with, like, the scum of the earth type human. I can, maybe that makes him more reluctant to do that again. There's still another 35 minutes, so we'll see what they fill the time with, I guess.
Jackass.
If it just finishes now,
did you call me a jackass, Matt?
I mean, yeah, which is, I think.
Well, you and your husband have a good day, Matt.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. So someone left a comment in on one of my previous debates or debate reviews with the one was with Matt and Daniel, Hakikachu, and one of the things that was coming up is I was confused why Daniel was like, "Oh, I thought you were with a guy or whatever else," and I just didn't understand what was going on. Someone in the comments was saying, like, "Oh, I think that it might be that Matt's partner, which Andrew was saying he's married to." So I don't actually know. I don't look into this stuff. Maybe I should. Matt's partner is a trans woman, and so because, like, Matt is like laying into that again of like, oh, your husband or whatever, like, or you're married to a man. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what's going on, which does give additional understanding. Like, it is a lot more reasonable for Matt to do what he's doing once you understand that. Once you know that, it's like, this isn't like, this is personal for him. It's not, you're when he was talking about, like, oh, you're not just like, you're just having sex with a man in a wig. He wasn't talking about, Andrew isn't saying that nebulously. That is an attack on Matt, at least from how Andrew sees it. Now, Matt probably doesn't think being accused of being gay is like cruel in itself. Like, he doesn't think, I don't imagine Matt would be upset. I don't think he thinks it's wrong to be gay or that it's a bad thing. It's about the accusation and what it means to the person saying it, right? I've had situations myself where someone has, like, called me something, and I won't get into the details, that I don't think there's a problem with, but it's about the vitriol in their voice. It's understanding what they're saying. It's something I also noticed is what happens with terms that we use for black people. They keep shifting over the years as to what's correct, what's politically correct, or what's, like, considered not rude. And, some people wonder about that. I used to wonder about it as well, as, like, why that happens. Part of it, as I've seen, is that people who are really hateful will sometimes use the, like, correct term, but fill it with all the venom that they would for the identified slur. I noticed this with what was the term? There was some term that I heard this used with, and that's what, like, made it click for me. I was never, like, opposed to like, okay, if people, it's people of color now, like, I'm not going to argue with you. I just was confused before. What was the term? Oh, I don't remember. It might have been people of color. I don't know. But, like, I heard someone say it with all the venom that you would imagine of someone, like, spitting the N-word through gritted teeth kind of thing. You could hear the hatred dripping from their words. And, once it can be used that way, once it's comfortable being used that way, well, maybe we should use something else that isn't, in fact, in this way. One of the things that's cool about the phrase people of color is it's really, really hard to infuse it with that kind of vitriol and that kind of hatred. And so for Matt, like, I don't think Matt thinks it's bad to be gay, but understanding that Andrew is accusing him of being gay and what it means to Andrew is probably the important thing, right? Does that make sense? This is why, like, sometimes it's not, even if someone says something you don't really find to be a problem, like, it can be hurtful and painful because of how they mean it. That might be a little bit of what's going on.
Have a wonderful day, Matt.
Yeah, and this is part of the problem too, and this is a little bit of what I've talked about before with whether you should debate, is like, when Matt leaves, Andrew doesn't leave too. He gets to laugh and gloat and be like, wow, this guy doesn't even want to debate, how ridiculous, look at me, I'm so good, and he gets to speak unopposed, is part of the problem. It can be reasonable to leave a debate in cases like I think there are a lot of times in the debate with Daniel in the debates with Daniel Hakikachu where Matt would have been completely justified in leaving, even as early as the first debate. That was really, he even like set himself up to be ready for that, and then it just never ended up happening. The risk, you see, it didn't even take much time. It took less than, I unpaused for like 3 seconds, and Andrew is like laughing and like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Like, he gets to look to the audience as powerful, and well, that is the trade-off you make with stuff like this, I guess, is what I'll say.
Yeah. No, that was fine. I mean, if you're going to take a parting shot, I will too, Matt. Yeah.
I think my parting shot's correct.
No, your parting shot's correct.
Okay, so he shouldn't get caught up in arguing, and he definitely shouldn't have called Andrew a jackass as he left, because Andrew's a little bit correct of like, if we're gonna fire shots, we can fire shots. I agree that Matt was correct, whereas Andrew was merely being bigoted. But remember that not everyone, like, some number of people here don't necessarily agree with that. I've been looking a lot at the screen behind them, and in particular, I see this number in the corner. It says 77% chance. I wonder if that's like, if the audience can dial in and like vote as to where they think, what they agree with, and maybe, and if that's the number that represents. If it is the case that the audience is this much on that side, then doing this is a lot more reasonable as well. More people are already going to be on board and in agreement with you before you've said anything. More people will see Andrew for what he has actually said and what he's actually done than if more people were in his camp. So I don't know. It's really hard to say whether that was a good idea or not. We'll let it play out.
Oh man, tough crowd.
Okay, if the crowd's not with him, that's good.
I'm sorry about that. And we do appreciate you coming. You guys covering our costs too?
No, you guys got to cover your own costs. Sorry.
So I agree that what Andrew said wasn't helpful in that. Well, hold on. Just let me.
Hold on, let's see. I'm trying to hear what James has to say. He's really quiet, so I'll turn it up for y'all.
Well, hold on. Just let me. What Andrew said.
He agrees with what Andrew said.
Helpful in that.
Oh, sorry.
I agree that what Andrew said wasn't helpful in that.
Okay, so James, in case you can't hear it, it's really quiet. I can barely make it out. That's why I had to turn the volume all the way up. James, the moderator, said, I agree that what Andrew said wasn't really helpful. So we're off to a good start. Let's see what he finishes.
Is like I'm already addressing it, so you want to.
He's so quiet.
Well, hold on. Just let me actually talk. Is like I'm already addressing it, so you want to interrupt me still? Really? Yeah. Self-control, please. So is Andrew like when you call people lunatics?
He didn't. In case you didn't hear it, mostly he was saying like he was pushing back against someone interrupting, probably Matt, and just like, here, please let me get the thought out, because like, fair.
Like that does come off as
The
weird.
presentation of a correct worldview.
So, but I at the same time I can't help that Matt left. Like I would.
Oh,
like
Matt already
to
left.
refute.
Okay, so whoever was interrupting was something else. He's like, yeah, he kind of agrees with Matt, but like Matt left, so what do we do? Yeah.
And explain to Andrew, like, hey, here's why calling people lunatics isn't an argument, and this is intellectually lowbrow. But I can't help that Matt left. I'm sorry about that. So.
Yeah, and so he's saying again, right? Like, he's calling someone else a lunatic, which weren't Andrew's exact words, but he was like implying a lot of really shitty things about Matt. Isn't really good debate, but like he can't help that Matt left. Like, what is he gonna do?
If you want to email me, I'm at moderatorDebate@gmail.com. I could even give you my number if you want to email me first and we can talk. But I think we'd agree that, calling people names isn't an argument and it's lowbrow.
I didn't call anybody any names.
So technically, Andrew didn't call Matt any names, but he did imply a lot. He implied, so I don't know what name you would even call it, would call based on it, but like the way he presented what Matt said about 9-year-olds having sex was implying that like Matt's happy and okay with it, and like anything short of wanting to criminalize it means you think it's necessary for the well-being of humanity for this to happen, which is not exactly pedophilia, but it's real close. And he implied that was what Matt was saying, even though, as Matt made clear, no, it wasn't. He also was saying that trans people are like delusional, which is attacking Matt's partner. He was also saying that like Matt was gay for having was implying that Matt was gay for being with a trans woman, which again the part of that makes it an accusation and an insult is what Andrew thinks about that, right? That Andrew thinks that's disgusting and wrong and degenerate and so on and so forth, even though Matt would not think so. It's about what Andrew, that like it's, Andrew is basically saying he's a degenerate in that way. And so while he did not technically say those things, no one hears it. We're not stupid, Andrew. We understand what you were saying. I missed a little bit of it because I did not take the comment in my YouTube on my YouTube video at face value. I was like, it's just a YouTube comment. It might be correct. It might be not correct. I don't care enough to look into it, but I'm not going to assume it's true. But like it seems that it is. So like, okay, well then no. As long as you know that it's really obvious what you were doing, Andrew, and it was not just to the detriment, but to the exclusion of arguments on the topic. So yeah, I get a lot why Matt left. It can be a bad look, but that was immediately followed with James turning and being like, Andrew, you fucked up. That helps a lot. Andrew doesn't now he's not standing in the ring gloating at his win. He's being admonished by the ref for the low blows. And so I think at this point, I don't know, it's looking pretty good for Matt. I don't know what going to fill the rest of the time is with, but let's
my
see.
preference would be that Matt would kind of explain that for the internet to see. Like, I think that's why we hosted these debates, is if there are bad arguments, that they'd be exposed to the world, like rebutted and exposed to the world. But I can't make Matt do something. So I am sorry that.
I wonder if Andrew is gonna pay for Matt's expenses or whatever. He seemed to say it as just like, a show of force of like, look how much I care. I'll pay for it. I don't give it. Just to like like the bravado or whatever. But I mean, I wonder if he'll actually do it, or if Modern Day Debate will ask him to hold to that, or just like if he reaches out, they'll say something. If not, not. But I'm a little curious. It doesn't really matter, but I want to know.
We don't appear to have a headline debate tonight.
You want to ask Andrew questions, do you?
Okay, are we doing Q&A just for Andrew?
In the spirit of debate, you guys want to ask questions, eh?
If you guys would like to engage with Andrew and challenge his calling people lunatics, I am open to that if you guys would like to.
Maybe we'll listen to a debate or two. Or not a debate, a question or two.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we
Just since we didn't really get a full debate review today.
All right. It's on you, buddy.
So it seems like you lost the debate. It seems like you didn't have an
Okay,
argument to
if
begin
that's
with.
how the audience is coming, if that's what the audience is taking away from it, then what Matt did was phenomenal, right? If it comes across to the people watching that Matt was in the right to do what he did, that Andrew was was not merely behaving in bad faith, but also insulting and rude in a way where it is reasonable for someone to simply say, I'm not going to put up with this, then Matt leaving was like the best possible choice. And it seems to be okay. So it seems like Matt read the room a lot better than I did. I mean, I don't have even access to seeing what the looks on their faces or anything like that. So
I'd like to know. So
because I fled the debate stage.
Yeah, where's your like degree in psychology to understand these like concepts?
Do you need a degree in psychology to know what a man and a woman are, sir?
So he's saying this incredulously, and he's in the implication is kind of right. You don't need that, but the people who insist that trans people are delusional are almost universally uneducated on the subject. They often conflate sex and gender. They don't understand even basics of this stuff and are in disagreement with experts in the field. And so this is why it's like pressing on that, like, well, you seem to think that you know better than people whose job it is to study this stuff. What gives you the credence? And of course it's, a thought terminating cliche. You don't know what the difference between a man and a woman is. First of all, nobody could quantify that. Not in the gendered sense. The thing that transphobes back up to is sex and conflating the two and just saying like there is a sex binary, not true, and that like that where you fall is where you fall. But understanding to define what womanhood is or what manhood is and what that means in a social sense is impossible. Nobody could do that. And where those lines are and where like what we expect from it's so fuzzy and constantly in flux. But of course he just goes to the thought terminating. So you don't know the difference between a man and a woman? No, I do. You seem uncertain because you'll look at someone in a dress with long hair and like boobs and whatever, and you'll be like, well, they were born with they were assigned male at birth. They're a dude. Do you not know what a woman is? Like, what the hell?
Apparently, you need.
Hold on.
Just
I'm taking control. Please. I'm serious. I'm gonna toss people if this gets out of hand. Seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty telling when James is losing his temper and ready to crack down. He was like, remember how much he put up with in the Daniel Hakikachu debate, even when he was specifically spoken to by Matt, when Matt was directly talking to him and saying like, hey, are you going to do something about this? He wasn't doing anything. Like, I do sometimes think James is too permissive as a moderator. And so for him to be at the point of like, I'm going to start booting people from the room if you can't keep it under control. Like, you can kind of tell the state is in like a little bit of what's going on in the room that we don't get to see.
I will carry you out myself. So keep self-control. Okay, Andrew, you have to let them ask the question.
Okay.
You pissed off everybody.
Okay, fair enough.
Including me. Like,
I can't really hear what James is saying, but it sounds like he's laying into Andrew for what he's been doing, and like he's saying like, dude, you gotta dial it back. He even said like something, he was doing something to him.
I don't care. I will carry you out myself. So keep self-control. Okay, Andrew, you have to let them ask the question.
Okay.
You pissed off everybody.
Okay, fair enough.
Including me. Like,
Oh, okay. So he was saying like that Andrew has pissed off everybody, including him. So yeah, like, and James is probably pretty pissed, right? Like, Matt left the debate because of Andrew's behavior, and like, James has worked with Matt before. Matt has been on Modern Day Debate a bunch of times, and like has put up with a lot of stuff that Andrew got him to leave. James is probably really mad. Like, this is a guest that he's probably on good terms with, someone that he has on frequently, and that's like not just good for his channel, but like he probably likes Matt if he keeps having him on. And now he's got to be wondering like, is Matt going to come back? Matt has threatened to not come back on Modern Day Debate before based on some of the stuff that's been going on. The only time I really remember seeing it is when someone in the live chat was really going off about like insults towards Matt and whatever. So like James is like might be worried that that someone who he's been on good terms with, who's had on a bunch, might be like just off of it for good. And like, yeah, I'd be pretty mad at Andrew for that too. Like, yeah, it seems James is pissed off, which is really interesting, even though this is completely unrelated to the debate. All right, so we set out for a debate review. We got some drama. You know what? This is good too, I guess. Let's keep it going.
For what?
You have to let them actually ask the
Yeah, and that Andrew seems
fair.
Seems to not understand what he did wrong. It's pretty telling.
So I didn't hear an argument against secular humanism. I'm not necessarily on board.
So he did have arguments against secular humanism. They were just not arguments that you're used to hearing. They're mostly like secular humanism promotes degeneracy, and like you might think I'm evil for wanting the things I want, but I want those things. The basic argument was like secular humanism promotes degeneracy. That was the argument. He didn't put it in those words, and it was a lot more drawn out than that, but there was an argument. It's just not one that we would normally recognize if you, are a thinking person who knows how to do logic, I guess.
Board with everything with the secular humanist manifesto. What specifically about the manifesto that he talked about?
Zero chance that Andrew was listening to it, but also in the context of a debate, it would be very difficult for him to process it. There was a lot to go over. You probably have to read it, even if you were taking notes, which is pretty unlikely. That's just not how debates like this tend to go. I would be taking notes in a competitive debate for sure, but if it was something I was hearing for the first time, I'm only going to get bullet points. You're not going to like process it in its entirety. I don't remember any of what that was, but I've also been pausing a lot. So for Andrew, he heard it 20 minutes ago. For me, we heard it an hour and a half ago. Oh, God, I talk a lot.
Do you find
I hope y'all like that
It's
I talk
all
a lot.
lies. It's literally based on non-reality being subjectively interpreted as whatever you want. You can make bold claims.
specific, please?
I'm giving you a specific one.
That's not
If
specific
you,
at all.
sir, believe that a man can be a woman,
That is not
and you can
something in the
think that you
secular
can gaslight the
manifesto.
entirety, are you going to let me answer the question or no?
Well, you're not answering the question.
If you want to
Andrew.
try to gaslight the entirety of humankind, that this falsehood actually exists in descriptive reality, and then say, well, that's science, and we rule with science, we rule with our mind, we rule with our brain, that's absurd. It's absurd.
So the thing he's saying, for clarity, to like cut through the bullshit, is I disagree with this thing, even though it's demonstrable. So the fact that you believe in it makes you the crazy one, and therefore everything you believe is wrong. That's the only way he can derive secular humanism. Like, there's a problem with the secular humanist manifesto that Matt was referencing from, I don't think trans people are real. That's the only way you can get that.
How in the world can you want a doctrine like that to run your life? How?
Well,
Where's
Matt made
that
clear
in
it's
the
not a
secular
run your life.
humanist
There are not thou
manifesto?
shalt nots, as he said repeatedly.
He has no descriptor for what is true. He has no justification for
Well, he
truth.
does.
Because he has no
Usually
justification for
scientific
truth,
basis.
they can make up whatever they want as being a truth claim. In this case,
The irony of this coming from a religious person is overwhelming. Dude, you constantly make shit up. Like, you think you were presenting anti-trans sentiment as a like in your opening speech about the value of Christian ethics, as though there is anything in Christian ethics that talks about it at all. You, if you're like holding to your positions, you should understand that the trans stuff is completely unrelated to the Christianity stuff, but you're acting like it isn't. You made that connection up. You just invented it. This is kind of what I mean when I said at the outset that oftentimes religious claims are merely personal claims that are using religion as an authority, and it doesn't matter if there's any actual association there. They just want to defer to the greatest possible authority, which to the fascist is themselves, but they will pretend it is a God who you think is the ultimate authority, and in practice it just means that the fascist, Andrew in this case, is the ultimate authority because he is speaking for God, even though God didn't say any of this stuff. It's not anywhere in Christian text. There is definitely no mention of being trans in any Christian text.
they make up what is a man and what is a woman. Do you understand?
Yeah, so you're making the presuppositional argument that you have to ground all beliefs in your belief in God.
Which
is
I
what
also
you're
made that
secretly
argument.
doing.
Yeah, well, no, you said those words. That's not making an argument. It is a presupposition, as the person pointed out. In fact, it is very, very similar to a position called presuppositionalism, which is basically to say like everyone knows God exists, and if they're saying otherwise, they're lying. Let's move from there. It's very, very, very similar. You are presupposing the truth of your position and then going, well, isn't it obvious how correct I am? Well, no, because it's exactly a circular argument, right? You're assuming the truth of your conclusion and then using that to derive your conclusion.
I conceded his entire worldview to ask him one descriptive claim about reality.
So you didn't concede his entire worldview? Because if you did, you would understand that trans women are women, right? That is an aspect of Matt's worldview. So no, you didn't concede all of it. That's a lie. Like this is another thing. People do this all the time. It was like they'll say like, oh, I'm doing an internal critique or something, but then we'll fundamentally misunderstand what the other person's view is, and if they did, they would understand that their critique, quote unquote, is not that at all. It is merely inserting their own belief into someone else's belief system and noting the incongruity. Yeah, no shit. There's going to be discrepancies and contradictions if we assume things that you misunderstand about reality into my worldview.
He got so upset about the descriptive reality claim, he fled the room.
Well, you're being personal about it. But...
what was personal?
Well, you just said he was so upset about a specific about you making a truth claim that he fled the room. That's personal. No, that's not what happened. But also, you're saying he was so upset. That's a personal statement.
Name anybody?
Your closing statement as he walked out. I hope you and your husband have a.
Oh, you mean after he called me a name?
Which was very personal.
When he called me a name first.
Yeah. So you're.
This is why Matt shouldn't have said he was a jackass. And like, I get it. I also would have the urge to. I also want to tell Andrew all the terrible things about him. And you know, it'd be really hard to hold that back for anybody, but you're seeing now the negative ramification. He has a justification for saying something much worse and much less grounded in what happened. It's just a bigoted insult, right? But now he feels he has justification. He probably wouldn't have said it if Matt hadn't called him a jackass, so he doesn't get to he wouldn't be admonished for it, but you know.
Insulting his partner along with him.
Yep.
Why not? If he's insulting you, why don't you just direct it?
How can it be an insult if I'm giving you a descriptive, real, true statement?
Does that sound like anything you've heard before? Maybe like, how can it be racist if it's true? When people say, how can it be racist if it's true? In my experience, what they're saying isn't true. It is a specific interpretation of things that could be true, and it is a feeble defense for saying something extremely bigoted.
That's a real, true statement. How could you be insulted unless you know it's a lie? How?
All right. Excellent.
So how can I put it? Like, BPF says that like calling himself a fascist is tongue-in-cheek. So if someone calls him a fascist and he says like, well, that's an insult, and I back it up with, well, it's true, would he feel any less insulted? Now, he might not feel insulted because he might be aware that he's a fascist. He is at the very least comfortable enough calling himself one that it probably doesn't like bother him personally, but it's the only thing I can really think of as an example. Like maybe if I called him a Nazi, he'd chafe at that, but like he basically is. And to say it's true, it would be like, oh, it's not, like, would that make it less insulting? Obviously, it's only considered true from your point of view, which is part of what makes it an insult, is that you are accusing me of something based on stuff I don't agree with, right?
And good luck to you.
Hey, Andrew.
And I'd like to remind everyone, it's like this guy, Andrew, who's been like so odious that Matt Dillahunty, who puts up with a lot of shit from the people he debates with, left the room. This guy, I'm not kidding, is one of the best debate moderators I've ever seen. It's wild. I don't understand it. I don't understand how someone like this ends up being that good as a moderator, that good at being neutral in a debate, when he's that incapable of like understanding arguments, of not being a bigoted asshole. Like, I just don't get it.
I'm pretty religious myself. I tend to keep to myself, but one thing that I've always been listening to, or I can't really say the verse really well. I don't really remember it by heart, but it's had something to do with along the lines of don't give swine, or don't give pearls to swine because they wouldn't know what to do with it.
Pearls before swine. Don't put pearls before swine.
I think you just called the whole audience swine.
Yeah. Sorry, not. Oh, that's just what the. That's just what the.
Yeah, I know.
That's what,
I think the saying, as I had heard it, if I remember right, is like, don't put pearls before swine. Basically, that like they won't, like someone won't appreciate what's put in front of them if they're too low to get it. It is pretty insulting, but there's an amount to which is like, that kind of makes sense. It's the same reason why you don't give, like, I don't know, like a super expensive watch to a child. Like they won't appreciate its value, and they're like likely to squander what they've been given, kind of thing. It's just,
just the quote was,
I think those are
basically saying don't push and try to convince someone if they're like unbelievers or they don't believe.
I don't think that's what that means, but I don't know. Maybe there are different interpretations.
What kind of
maybe my understanding isn't correct.
Fired up and want to try and tell them, your position,
So my position
that is
has
a really weird question for a debate. Like, we're in a debate. That's what we're here to do. We're here to convince people to our position and make arguments towards it. It seems weird to be like, why would you bother doing that?
Requirement in truth. It's one of the commandments of Christianity. It's one of the 4 things that we should focus on is what is true. And yet people make these ridiculous descriptive.
So this is what I'm not. I mean, I'm an atheist. I'm not a Christian, but I've listened to a lot of Christians. I've never heard anyone say, oh, like, there are the 4 things that are like important for Christianity, and one of them is spreading truth or whatever. I've never heard anyone say that. But it goes back to what I was saying. He uses religiosity as a justification for the things he wants. And so he'll say it's a religious precept. It's that, because he's a Christian, he has to do the things he's doing, but he just wants to do the things, right?
Claims and expect us. Look at how pissed off some of these people are.
Look how pissed off.
Because I told the truth. What in the world did I say? That was not true. Nothing.
You said a lot of things that weren't true, but like, Andrew, you're just never going to understand why what you're saying wasn't true, and that they were also insulting and bigoted. But you'd have to learn so much, and you're so unwilling to do that you'll never understand. And so that's why he's lost here, right? That's why he's like, why are they mad at me? And you can hear how upset he is. Like, I think he's feeling the weight of being told off, being told he's wrong, being in a hostile audience that is like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? And, scrambling a little bit. It hurts to be wrong. Like, literally is like mentally painful to be wrong. It's very hard, and I mean, nobody does it well. I don't think I do it well, to understand that you're wrong and do something about it. And to be told that, and not only that you're wrong, for Andrew, it's wrong based, and the level at which you're wrong is a very fundamental level of what he believes. There are so many, he's not, like, we're talking about him being wrong about the thing he said, but for that to be wrong, the thing he believes about trans people has to be wrong. And that's wrong because of this and this and this. Like, he's wrong on so deep a level, he couldn't ever reckon with it. And he's getting mad. Like, that's why it's a little bit like a caged animal, where he's like, what the hell is going on? Why are you mad at me? Like, confusion and rage.
Nothing I said,
like, you could hear the rage,
which is untrue. And yet they're still that upset.
Why are you mad at me? Because I said things
because
were true. Well,
they don't have truth. There is no truth on their side. It's all a bunch of lies and a facade.
Yep.
And so
now we have the cope, right? The self-consolation. It's because they believe lies, and that's why they're mad at me. The irony, of course, is overwhelming. Every accusation is a confession, right?
Tell them what's true, they malfunction. They go into NPC mode. Mm-hmm. I was told man can be woman.
I'm not being insulting. I'm not doing anything personal. Also, no one said a man can be a woman. Only you have said that so far.
It's insane. Yeah. They can't. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, I just think that
I
that
do
can
like how pathetic
go,
Andrew is coming
hand in
across.
hand.
It
Like,
is
religion and secular
valuable.
humanism can go hand in hand if you kind of just you're not totally right, you're not totally wrong, but we're in America, you can live the way you want.
And by the way, secular humanism, we can imagine a world where secular humanists are not in favor of trans rights, right? There's nothing inherent about it. The inherent thing about it is that it's about flourishing, right? If somehow being trans was actually detrimental to yourself and the world around you, it's not. Then we can imagine secular humanists well, maybe we should do something else about it. There are things that are like that, like pedophilia. A secular humanist would say that we obviously engaging in pedophilia is bad for the world, bad for the person that engages in it, and especially for the victim of it. So don't do it. Were in a similar vein, you can imagine that there's no association necessarily, but Andrew wants to talk about the trans thing, probably to get under Matt's skin. Well, he did. Congratulations, you did it. Is it everything you hoped it could be? I don't think it was.
I do have a personal problem when you try to force it, regardless if it's religion or secular humanism. When you try to force your beliefs and tell them oh, you're a bigot if you don't believe this, or you're delusional if you don't believe this and stuff. But it's just let's all get together, be friends,
And it seems kind of telling, because I was thinking about it. You could approach it the other way, right? Maybe because Andrew keeps saying is oh, clearly it's based on secular humanism is based on untruth because they believe basically that trans people are real. But you could a way that argument could make sense, it doesn't, but could make sense at the very least in logical flow, is approaching it the other direction of we can see that there's a problem with secular humanism due to the conclusions that we reach if we follow its principles, and then lead to the trans thing. Now, he'd still be wrong because there's nothing wrong with trans people. But, of course, when you put it in that way, it seems weird that that's the example you want to go to. Again, it seems like the only reason that that's the example you want to go to is because you're trying to get under Matt's skin, because you want to call his partner a man, because you want to delegitimize her gender and her existence, and get mad about it because you're insulting someone he cares about, presumably someone he loves. I think it sounds like he's married, so I presume that he loves his wife or whatever. But
I'm not adverse to people having the most radical, for me, worldviews on planet Earth. I debate with them all the time professionally.
You've said so openly.
Okay, all the time professionally. Talk to them from all over the world. I don't run away from their views. I don't run.
That's cute. I like that. The reason why is because you can tell he's why is the audience against me? That guy ran away. Shouldn't you be against him? Isn't it about power or whatever? But he's just well, what the hell? Yeah, I can see him scrambling, and it's pathetic, and I enjoy when fascists come off as pathetic. You don't have to be like this, Andrew. You really don't.
Run away if they think that they're mean.
Yeah, look like he's getting juvenile.
I tangle with them and their ideology, and I destroy it because it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wrong ideology. Matt knew
I've seen this guy debate. He doesn't know how to make an argument. That's what's wild to me about him being a good moderator. He doesn't know how to make an argument. He doesn't know how to understand an argument. He doesn't know how to contend with arguments. And I don't just and if he does, he's intentionally not doing it when he debates. I've seen we didn't get to see him actually engage in debate, but he's really bad at it, except on the axis where the right cares only about showing strength. He probably is good at that. It's not something I'm particularly great at noticing, but when it comes to actual argumentation, he is dog shit.
Coming. The next thing was just a simple question, and it would have led, unfortunately for him, to a place that nobody likes to go because societally it's become uncomfortable to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And his ideology clearly promotes the discomfort in telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
There is truth. There's objective truth. At what point are we going to decide?
All I'm hearing from him is coping and self-censorship.
That a 400-pound guy is skinny because he says he's skinny. Come on. At some point, we have to use what he calls rationality and reason. Right?
All right,
Matt would not say that.
Hey, Andrew.
And by the way, a 400-pound guy could be skinny in a world where everyone's 600 pounds. For what it's worth, if a horse were 400 pounds, it'd probably be dead because that is like horses are like over 1,000 pounds or something like that, you know, like skinny to the point of like it's probably just a skeleton and maybe a little bit more, you know. Yeah, like how we categorize things sometimes it varies. I don't know. It just feels, I don't know. I just wanted to clap on something stupid,
Mentioned
I guess.
truth 80 times.
It's not super
It's
relevant.
It's true. Can you describe to us your process for finding truth?
Oh, I was hoping this question was going somewhere else. So he was saying like it's true. What I was hoping the follow up to that would be is like, can you understand that the people that you're talking to, or like that Matt at the very least, and a lot of other people who we've talked to on the subject, can you understand that they disagree that it's truth, and not merely that they're denying reality? Because that's how he puts it, right? Because he can't argue for his position. He doesn't know how to make arguments. He doesn't know how to process arguments, any of that. So he just announces that it's true, and now that he's done that, you know, it's gospel. You must believe it. But doesn't seem capable of understanding the idea that there is a thing you believe and other people disagree with it. It's not that they don't understand it. It's not that they they are delusional or whatever. Like, they have reasons for disagreeing. Even when I disagree with someone, like I disagree with transphobes, obviously, I don't argue that they're delusional or that they don't or that they like are rejecting truth. Well, I mean, I guess I do when I can demonstrate it, but I do understand that they are capable of disagreeing with me, that they have reached their conclusion because they do not think the same things I do. I think they're wrong, and I'm willing to demonstrate that. But Andrew instead just says, it's true, what's wrong with you for not believing it? And you're like, and the fact that you believe this thing means that you obviously are, like, your whole worldview is based on delusion. Maybe they just disagree with you. And this is what makes it him incapable of internal critique. This is also something that's been noted about the right in general, is that the right is really bad at empathy, and that's something you need to understand people's positions, people's arguments, where they're coming from.
Yeah, so the same as all Christians. We gain truth through divine revelation.
See what I mean? We gain truth from divine revelation. What he's saying is that God has told him his positions are correct. How dare you argue with him? It's coming out again. But also, Andrew, show me anywhere a divine revelation that indicates that trans people aren't the gender with which they identify, that gender and sex are the same thing, that your sex defines your gender. Find me any of that and we can talk. Because he's lying. He's saying that it comes from divine revelation so he can justify his positions, even though they are unjustified.
Belief in God, church history, we have all sorts of different metrics that we can use, which I'm happy to get into with somebody. During a debate, he could have brought all those things up. I would have been happy to go through each one of them.
I've seen him do this before. He says he's happy to go through each one of them. He can't understand when people disagree with the stuff that he says. So, like, no. Like, yes, he's happy to go through it, but he will not understand it, and he'll just say the same thing over and over.
Absolutely. We can use these descriptors for what is true. But even in the comments, I don't think you and I would disagree in just the way that we kind of look at things, what might be true or not true. You know, I think we can both look at a tree, for instance, and say, you know what? That's a tree.
So
the problem is when...
So that's really funny that he says that, because that's a categorization thing. Where does a thing become too tall to be a bush and or too short to be a tree? Why is that a tree and not two half trees, which we have different words for? Why is it not a trunk, a bunch of branches, and some leaves? Why is it a tree? You know, there's like categorization is nebulous and arbitrary. We make these distinctions because they're valuable, because they're useful to us. And like, I'm sure there are trees we could find where it's like, or plants we could find where it's like, ooh, is that a tree? Is that a vine? Is that like a bush? Yeah, but he puts it in that term to make it seem simple, because only through simplicity can his argument make sense. Only if you reject nuance and be like, yeah, a tree's a tree, a desk's a desk, and a man's a man. Like, it's only in approaching things as a 5-year-old that these things make sense.
Somebody goes,
notably, something that Kent Hovind does all the time is like, even a 5-year-old understands this. Well, as it turns out, 5-year-olds are not grand arbiters of truth that understand everything about reality. Hate to break it to you. We can know things that 5-year-olds don't understand.
No, it's not, man. It's a rock. And no, wait.
And notice the
no,
difference. It's between
you know
tree
what I mean?
and rock.
And they try to gaslight you into believing that it is. That's insanity to me. To me, that stuff is insane. It's just pure
Incidentally,
insanity.
like the distinction between these categorizations is so famously difficult that like there's in the system that we normally learn for classification of life, you know, kingdom, phylum, order, whatever. I believe one of them is this like weird nebulous category of like they're not really plants and they're not really animals and they're not really like single cell, or we're not really sure what they are. Like it's kind of weird. Where do we put them? Like a platypus is isn't in that category, but it's another weird thing to categorize. Algae is another one, or like, is it really a plant? Is it really not a plant? It's like kind of weird. It's famously difficult, but no, he wants to make it. You know, it's a 5-year-old. That man, that tree, that woman. That's as far as you can go.
One of the ways that you mentioned that you find truth is through divine revelation.
Mm-hmm.
If two people have conflicting divine revelation, how would you find truth between them?
Yeah, so that's a good question for Protestants. So Protestants, for instance, I'm
not sure I understand the question.
One of the ways that you mentioned that you find truth is through divine revelation.
Okay.
If two people have conflicting divine revelation,
right? Yeah. So
how would you find truth between them?
Yeah.
So he's right. This is more of a question for Protestants. For Catholics, it's like they have their one like source of truth, and it's the Catholic Church, and they like follow dogmatically. Remember, this guy is a fascist. He likes hierarchy. That's why he likes the Catholic Church and whatever else. But also, a lot of the things he believes are definitely not derived from the Catholic Church. You know, I'm pretty sure the current Pope was like, yeah, gay people are cool actually, and it's fine. And Catholics very frequently responded by saying that guy's not Catholic. The Pope, the literal fucking Pope. They say he was like, oh, he's not Catholic. So like, it's the appearance of authorial or authoritative agreement, even though it's not.
So that's a good question for Protestants. So Protestants, for instance, I ask the Protestants the same exact question. If you're imbued with the Holy Spirit, and you're imbued with the Holy Spirit, and you're both reading the same passage, and you come up with completely different answers to what that passage means, how do you know who's telling the truth?
Well,
how do you know which one of you is right?
So for what it's worth, this is not a problem solved by Catholicism because, okay, what makes you or your priest more correct? Well, the priest went through seminary or whatever. Okay, so if you go through seminary and you have a different opinion, or what if two priests have a different opinion? Then it's solved by the bishop. Okay, what if two bishops have a different opinion? Oh, then it goes up to the Pope eventually, right? But then you disagree with the Pope. So I don't know what to tell you. Like people disagree with Vatican II, a council that happened in like the 60s that said like you can do mass in something other than ecclesiastical Latin. People can or like the Jews are not responsible for the death of Jesus, so on and so forth. And there are a lot of Catholics, or I shouldn't say a lot, there's some number of Catholics that vehemently oppose that. I would bet that Andrew is among them. They often call them some like tradcasts. They're opposed to the Vatican II and stuff. And like, how do you reckon with that? Aren't you just wrong? Isn't it dogma? He's lying, right? He wants the certainty of dogma with no argument and no dissent, even though it exists, and he wants to wield that for his own power.
Same exact criticism that I have. Luckily for us, we have church history. We have church history and apostolic succession. So we actually know what the Bible says right from the very beginning through apostolic succession. We don't have any disagreement because we yield to the authority of the church, who's in universal agreement.
Except based on interpretation. I mean,
based on interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the interpretation that you think that my church holds that you disagree with?
I don't know what specific beliefs.
Well, then why would you even open your mouth about it? It makes no sense.
Okay. So this is kind of like what a flat earthers do, where it's like you have to know how does he know you're going to ask that question to be ready with that example. But obviously, there are different interpretations of religion that have happened throughout the course of Christianity. I mean, Galileo was tried for arguing that what was it, that the Earth is not the center of the universe, or no, that was Copernicus. Sorry, Copernicus. But now the Catholic Church isn't in opposition to a heliocentric model. Clearly, interpretations changed.
I'm good. Thank you.
Another question.
And again, like I'm pretty sure the current Pope thinks gay people are fine and can go to heaven. and Andrew thinks they're degenerates who are like who should be like eradicated and will go to hell.
Ian, come around there, buddy.
Just a final question. So is it true that the topic today was, will secular humanism beat Christianity, or was it about transgender?
No. The topic today was secular humanism versus Christian ethics. Christians have an...
Okay, so Andrew is technically correct in the sense that the topic on the screen behind him does not actually reflect the topic that he was given or that they were supposed to be talking about. But if he was listening to the question was whether it was about secular humanism and Christianity, or was it about transgenderism, which is what Andrew was talking about. Now, Andrew was like correcting the actual topic as described by the questioner, but he's missing the actual point of the question, which is, hey, weren't you supposed to be talking about this and not transgenderism, which is what you spent your time on?
An ethical duty to tell the truth. And the secular humanist, does not. As I just demonstrated live to everybody.
This is what I mean. He thinks he demonstrated the truth of his position about about trans people not being real. Did he even make an argument? This is what I mean about him being terrible at argumentation. He actually is really, really bad at it, but he thinks he's great at it, which is why he is very smug.
They have absolutely no duty to tell anybody the truth about anything. None.
So that's also not true.
I think everybody can see on screen what the debate topic is and what he said.
Okay, so yeah, he's getting kind of baited, but like the point of his question is correct. Like, we're not here to talk about trans stuff. Why are you doing that?
It was not the truth.
It says, no, that was not the debate topic even just an hour ago. Even
Andrew's
just an hour ago, that was not the debate topic.
But the point of the question
is...
okay, but he's dodging the point of the question, and that's what the questioner should get to. Okay, fine. Like, that's not... But the topic of the discussion was secular humanism and Christianity, not transgenderism, right?
To be fair, that is a question, regarding to the debate. But yeah, we will carry on the questions there.
Given that this clearly wasn't the topic and you've been bodied on the issue before, including by Nominal Naomi a year ago, why not get
dude got wrecked
on a new topic?
I don't know about that
Okay, so first of all,
Andrew is terrible at debate.
I literally went through and said, these people have no justification for their beliefs at all. Could have gone after that. I went on to further explain, here's how I can demonstrate that they have no justification for any of their claims. Here's how I can demonstrate they don't have truth on their side.
Yeah, but so he's acting as though he just used it as an example, but remember he set like 3 criteria for what has to be done to let it, or he wins the debate, and the criteria were all, you have to convince me on transgenderism 100%. Like it all boiled down. It all went back to that exact one topic. He was in fact transforming the topic to one about transgenderism.
Because I can show an example in real time of these people completely and totally lying to you. Totally lying to you. And so many of you in the audience are like, how dare you? I'm not saying anything incorrect here.
You are. You're saying a lot of
You're
things
being
incorrect.
lied to. I'm sorry.
Your inability to process that people disagree with you and why is a huge issue.
Yes, it is.
I missed what was said.
We have to make sure that you're speaking into the mic, or otherwise the online audience can't hear you.
Do you want to come back on up? All right.
That's not how myself or the commenters on those videos remembered.
Well, Nominal Naomi got obliterated on that topic, and if you'd like the video evidence,
maybe I'll watch it in my
I've got 7 times the views that Nominal Naomi had, and Nominal Naomi.
Notice the metric. He got more views. Does that make you right? Okay. You got more people watching watching your channel. What if that could just be you're additionally popular? That might be more people came in agreeing with you. It might be that more people watched it from your channel because they have more people in common, even if they disagree with you. It doesn't mean anything. But remember, for the fascists in particular, but for the right in general, debate is about power. I had more views, therefore I won.
He backed out of a second debate with me. Just letting you know.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. This goes back to what I was talking about. Like, when you choose not to debate these people, they gloat as like, "Oh, I won so hard that they backed out of a second debate with me. They're afraid to debate me, yada yada, etc." This was really, really, really common, like 2015, 2017 kind of era. I guess it's around Gamergate time. This was really, really common, and it was an issue. And then, as it turns out, when people on the left argue with these numbnuts, like it's not hard to make them look foolish and to demonstrate your point.
Just
They're
letting you
actually
know.
really bad at debate. The only thing that
Do you
made
have
them
any
look
other
good at
questions
it was
from
nobody
anybody
was
in the chat?
debating them.
Or our audience here at the chat. See, I'm still in moderation mode. My brain's gotten fried from all the
All right.
traveling, and that just happened. So that's a little bit exciting.
Do we
isn't
sit
it?
through the whole
Well,
thing?
other
I
side-
don't think so. I think at this point I'm willing to cut it. We've already gone for kind of a while, and we're just in Q&A, and no one, like, we got the sense of the crowd as well. That, well, I guess I'll apologize. I did want to do a debate review. I thought that's what we were going to get, but that's not what happened. As it turns out, Matt was completely right to leave when he did. Clearly, it came across the way he wanted it to, and not the way I was worried about it coming across. I mean, Andrew's just terrible at debate and an awful bigot, and if you said that to him, he'd be like, oh, you're just like screeching in the wind and you're just like a triggered SJW or whatever. But like, I think it's been demonstrated at this point. Everything he said was devoid of nuance, devoid of understanding, refusing to even process what people are trying to say. We saw that most notably, I think, with that last question or not the last question, but a previous question where it was like, hey, was the topic of debate about secular humanism and Christianity, or was it about transgenderism? And he was like, no, you got the wording of the debate wrong. It's actually about this. It's like, right. But the point of the question was, you made it all about transgender stuff, and it wasn't the topic of debate, was it? Yeah, I mean, not really much to say. Not much debate actually happened. We gave it a good shot. I would say I'd make it up to you and do more of that, like do a debate review like makeup later in the week. But tomorrow's Magic Day, and then Thursday we have These Are the Questions again. Now I just got word from Hexic. Sadly, he will not be able to make it. But the guest I had lined up still has that in their schedule. So it'll just be the two, me and the guest, and that'll be a lot of fun. I'll double check to make sure they're available. If not, well, I'll let you know. We'll maybe push it back a week or something like that. But the rest of the week is already accounted for as to what we're doing. Maybe we'll do. Well, I think I should try to do one debate review a week at least. It seems like people are interested in those. So maybe we'll do 2 next week since this one was kind of a bust. I hope it was interesting at the very least. While it might not have been, a debate review, it might not have been what we were here for. It was really interesting in a lot of other ways. We got to see a lot of stuff that I'm glad I got the opportunity to talk about, it, like tendencies I've seen in a lot of types of debaters. And well, Andrew was a great expression of that. You might not believe me given what we've seen, but I promise you this guy is an absurdly good moderator, and I don't understand it. I keep going back to it because, like, you can see the guy is not only incredibly dishonest and bigoted and fascist and like all sorts of other shit, and also like colossally stupid, but like he somehow manages to do that well. I don't understand it. I really don't. And like better than James, who does this like it's like half of his job, maybe not half, but it's a lot of his job is to moderate these debates. Yeah, it's really, really weird to me. I hope y'all found it valuable. I did, just in a very different way. And I know normally I don't go through the Q&A, even the little that I did, but we didn't really have a debate. And I was curious where the audience was on the stuff. And I'm glad I got a sense of that, because I think if we had cut it after Matt left, I would have been like, yeah, I don't think that was good from Matt. But now I'm like, actually, I think it worked out. So Matt, I was giving you the opportunity to redeem yourself, and you did, just in a very different way than I was expecting. So, good on you for that. Andrew, you're a moron and a bigoted fascist, but you knew that. You knew all of those things. So, such as it is. That all being said, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks so much for doing so. Don't forget that follow button, like, comment, subscribe, all that wonderful, beautiful stuff for internet doots and up points and whatever else. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you next time. Bye.